aus der Position, in der sich Kato gerade befindet. Muss immer wieder mit seinem Schild halt eben arbeiten, das Ein- und Ausfahren, irgendwie eine schwache Situation, vielleicht mit Deckung arbeiten, um Ben rauszunehmen. Der hat es allerdings auch nicht leicht tatsächlich. Muss hier auf Distanz gehen, der Versuch, schön von Kato. Leider nicht erfolgreich, das sah fast nach einer wirklich erfolgreichen Runde aus. Und irgendwie trifft er irgendeine wie eine Bullet in Montagne. Sehr knappe.
Er kann mit seinem LMG da rumpressern. Ben, der hält das aktiv, kriegt den ersten geinjured. Den zweiten, Double Kill von Sograna. Jetzt Ben auch. Ben raus, Watchdog, Triple Kill, 1 gegen 1. Man sitzt auf dem Diffuser und Watchdog, der stickt das. Pros never fake. Sograna kommt angerannt, schafft es.
Oh mein Gott.
Sograna schafft es ganz knapp nicht mehr. Aus Heaven. Kannst jetzt auf Side pressern. Da ist der Smoke. Da ist Rismo, kriegt eine Granate, da rennt man weg. Ben aber, Penguin, er schießt über den Haufen, wollte den Smoke treffen. Rismo fällt auch noch durch die Hand von Ben. Falco, Sograna raus, Oxide, Falco raus. Hier geht's Schlag auf Schlag. Nico jetzt alleine auf dem Roam. Einer geinjured.
Eben gerade die Kills wie in der letzten Runde holen. Aber ich denke eben auch, dass sie vielleicht jetzt ein bisschen übermütig werden, zu aggressiv gehen gegen NXT, die damit rechnen werden, weil die wissen, die brauchen jetzt die Runden. Und man will vielleicht sogar schon auf den Plant hier gehen. Nein, Ben holt sich Watchdog raus. Der Taranka, den will man weghaben. Und den holt man sich jetzt auch. Ben mit dem nächsten. Und den nächsten in einer Reihe. Rimso weg.
Zu verlieren. Dann muss man aber, glaube ich, doch durch und kann dann den Track finden. Allerdings hat man immer noch keine Kontrolle auf der anderen Seite der Map. Und da ist plötzlich immer den Bathroom drin. Man hat plötzlich Offense-Kontrolle. Ryzen hat so aggressiv gespielt, dass sie vergessen haben, dass sie auch Bombside verteidigen müssen. Und jetzt müssen sie jetzt in den Retake gehen, aber das sieht überhaupt nicht gut aus. Max ist noch allein im Ein.
Von Sograna jetzt Ben auch. Ben raus, Watchdog, Triple Kill, 1 gegen 1. Man sitzt auf dem Diffuser und Watchdog, der stickt das. Pros never fake. Sograna kommt angerannt, schafft es.
Oh mein Gott.
Sograna schafft es ganz knapp nicht mehr. Aus Heaven mit einer knappen Kiste sichert sich hier diese Map. Und wir gehen auf Map Nummer 3. Und wir gehen auf die vollen 3 Maps.
Ja, wir gehen auf die volle 3 Maps. Ich sag mal so, ich hätte mich jetzt nicht wenig gefreut, wenn die Jungs von Powerone den Sieg jetzt confirmed hätten, weil sie hätten es absolut verdient gehabt, muss man ehrlicherweise sagen. Aber allen gebühren Respekt.
Und der geht auf den Plan. Ehrenbaba, der weiß genau, der muss das nur kann. Muss ihn covern, da kommt das Feuer, muss die Position fallen lassen und jetzt sind wir in der Post-Situation. Da ist Hungry mit dem Headshot gegen Ehrenbaba. 1:1 Situation, Postplan. 7 Sekunden, dürfen wir nicht vergessen, braucht Hungry zum Counter-Diffusen. Das heißt, er muss bei mindestens 7,01 Sekunden spätestens am Diffuser sein.
Fuse über den Long ganz deep hinten auf Ramp in Garage ist. Lampe positioniert, der holt sich diesen Kill. Muss man natürlich irgendwie versuchen, irgendwie an Hauver ranzukommen. Irgendwer den Diffuser. Und da sind so viele Crosses mit dabei, Kami, dass man da so schwer rankommt. Auch der Kapitalbolzen wird es nicht retten.
Na, der Hauver darf da nicht mehr leben und er lädt weiter, der kriegt den Double Kill hier. Jetzt wird er rausgeholt, er tradet, aber Hauver am Ende mit dem Trade ein Triple Kill in Server, baut er sein Asami-Setup, bunkert sich mit dem Diffuser ein und können. Wir sehen, der erste Spot ist der Topfloor, der angespielt wird. Die Turks sagen, okay, Topfloor, wir haben es bewiesen, wir können den ja so semi angreifen gegen GK, aber dafür wollen sie jetzt umso mehr auf der Verteidigung zeigen, dass sie es verteidigen können. Buns sind jetzt auch wieder reset worden und sind durch. Die Turks wollen auf jeden Fall nicht gegen Schilde spielen, das ist auf der Map super verständlich. GK wiederum zieht einmal den Fenrir und einmal den Mute raus. Das sind Buns, wo ich sagen muss, die sind ziemlich...
Arbeitet sich langsam von der Seite von Entropy vor. Man hat die Clash gefunden. Es ist der Blackbeard und die Clash, die sich begegnen. Macht in diesem Fall nicht so viel Unterschied. Die Clash kann natürlich immer ihre Positionen ändern. Weil sobald der Blackbeard gesichtet ist auf der anderen Tür, wird natürlich die Aufmerksamkeit verschoben. Und das macht man hier von der Seite von Destroy schon sehr gut.
Sehr nicer Headshot hier von Nox, der genau das Timing abpasst, während da die Nail rausgezogen wird. Tinker damit down. Froxy ist auch schon bei Half.
Auf der Bahn noch liegen. Mal gucken, ob es da gleich den nächsten Peak gibt gegen die Hibana. Faith holt sich aber Tribe raus. 2 gegen 4. Ivek wird hier in der Überzahlsituation. Hat noch eine Minute zu spielen. Und das Telefon klingelt schon bei den Jungs von No Offense, die sich hier nicht mehr viel verstecken können. Oh, den ersten nicht bekommen. JSR holt sich Sanity weg und Moritz hat da keine Möglichkeit mehr, sich auch noch Faith am Ende zu ziehen.
Ja, wie du gesagt hast, Mama ruft an, Miracoli ist fertig und so schnell sind die Jungs halt auch von E-Wave auf der Seite und clearen sich hier.
Ja, First Ghost, Triple Kill von ihm, holt sich auch das heraus. Apfel holt sich Moritz, aber aufpassen. 2 gegen 1, 5, sehr, sehr low. Solange First Ghost steht, ist hier noch nicht so leicht essen. Apfel, Kill gegen First Ghost, 1 gegen 1 jetzt hier. Wer holt sich die entscheidende Runde? Womöglich schon. Ja, Apfel muss ein bisschen einstecken, kann sich aber 5 holen. Mit dem Quad-Kill holt er sich die Runde für E-Wave. Und ihn musst du in der Afterplan-Situation.
Und der verhindert auch nicht, dass ihm das Schild kaputt geht, aber...
Player 45, was? Das darfst du nicht missen. Da ist das Player 45 gerade.
Vorsicht, da ist jemand an der Hedge. Man geht zwar jetzt für den Diffuse, aber man wird natürlich vom Gegner erwartet.
Gott.
Man kann den aber
Oh
nicht
mein
decken,
Gott.
weil man nicht weiß, dass man aufgehört hat. Das
Oh
gibt's
mein
doch
Gott.
nicht. In der letzten Sekunde. Just
Wo die Spieler anfangen vom Radar zu verschwinden.
das ist ein Spawn-Pick an.
Der ist sehr böse.
Der ist wirklich frech. Ja, da wird er leider noch keinen finden. Man sieht jetzt leicht den Compromise ungefähr, wo sich das Spiel befindet. Frage ist nur, es ist halt immer so ein 50-50, ne? High Risk, High Reward. Ju! War aber
Sieg es
vorzusehen, sind wir mal ehrlich.
Ja.
Also gerade
Und es
wenn du
ist-
gegen eine Clash da kämpfst, lass es lieber, bitte. Was
Ich will nichts
für...
sagen.
Gereicht. 1 gegen 1. Blitz gegen KI. Kann man da was machen? Er sieht die Capcan-Traps rechtzeitig, aber zerschießt den Goyo-Kanister, muss dementsprechend Damage fressen. Und das kann sich noch rechnen im 1 gegen 1 gegen die TZSG. Der KI umläuft ihn fast, aber jetzt ist man Close Range. Man kann da noch rumlaufen, ist nicht geblendet. Man geht ins Mini, das ist nicht unbedingt geil und die Defender gewinnen aufgrund von Zeit.
Froxy aber hat einen geinjured, kann das nicht confirmen. Jetzt sind es
Nächstes
D7
Down.
und Shugi gegen Sushi. Nächstes Down, du hast es gesagt. Sushi alleine ist jetzt der diesen Traum hier am Leben erhalten kann, im Upper Bracket zu bleiben. Mit der
Oh,
Super
die
Shorty
Shotgun.
geht ran, kriegt es mit der Super Shorty. Und somit haben wir...
Auf jeden Fall ihnen Angle ready dafür. Wird allerdings ausgebrochen, aber das macht keinen Unterschied.
Gisa nicht wirklich da mit dem Auge für Faith. Der Ding von Faith war auch ein bisschen früher angesetzt, auch von Gisela, bevor die Drohne durchgekommen wäre. Hätte Gisela eventuell noch eine Sekunde warten können, wäre Faith eventuell Track gewesen, dann hätte das Ganze anders aussehen können. Aber Faith holt sich den nächsten auf Striker. Panoza holt sich Schwarz, und somit ist es Max alleine gegen 4. Einmal das Szenario der letzten Runde umgedreht und diesmal und Andy Early gegen Eiffelton und Red Cannon. Red Cannon hat sich den Diffuser zurückgeholt, ist jetzt auf der Bombsite. Der läuft natürlich in die Flinte von Andy Early. Red Cannon raus. Eiffelton holt sich den Kill auf Andy Early. Der kommt hier nicht durch die Rotation durch. Faith muss jetzt wissen, wo er kommt. Der Yellow Ping ist auf. Faith dreht sich jetzt um. Im richtigen Moment gerade so noch. Kriegt den Kill nicht durch. Aber Eiffelton holt sich den Gunfight. Not gegen Elend. Endet mit der Secondary.
In der letzten Sekunde, das gibt es nicht. Und da bringt man sich zurecht. Wie Mainstairs. Andy Early. Oh, Andy Early mit dem Opening gegen Anon und der Red Cannon. Damit die Joker Ibi raus, die kurz am Durchklingeln war. Und die IQ fallen hier sehr früh.
Und einfach
Den Track suchen, weil das besonders mit der Shotgun sonst schwierig wird, Kills irgendwie zu finden. Und gerne, man hört ihn natürlich auch ein bisschen, die Smoke kommt raus, um den Blitz hier zu covern. Ist die Frage, läuft man da durch die Smoke durch oder läuft man aneinander vorbei? Man läuft aneinander vorbei, aber der Ehrenkill bringt Striker auch nicht viel mehr als eine höhere Kraft auf den Kopf.
ja, höhere Zahl auf dem Scoreboard bringt dich aber auch nicht weiter, wenn die Runde nicht gewonnen wird. Somit direkt gesehen, also 2,5 Stunden gekommen. Nur Deli mit dem allerersten Frag überhaupt fürs Team. Also, die wirken noch nicht ganz wach, die Jungs von Chillgeist.
Ja, Nero wird jetzt noch mal ein kleines bisschen aggressiver, spielt um das Mira-Window in Console Office drumherum. Muss natürlich aufpassen, da das Reinforcement links nicht gesetzt ist. Somit sind da ein paar Blindshots jetzt gerade auch in seine Richtung gekommen. Er verliert ein kleines bisschen AP, aber zieht sich zurück. E1D wird gezündet von Fanu, das inzwischen geschafft hat, bis bis Meeting vorzuarbeiten. Gleichzeitig Delay über Secretary am Start. Also sie ziehen die Schlinge da oben zu, aber auf der anderen Seite macht das auch Ryzen wirklich gut. Die ziehen sich Stück für Stück zurück, bekommen Support über die Vertikale, Schwarze mit dem Frag, Striker ebenfalls mit dem Headshot dabei und somit ist es nur noch Jack und das könnte hier fast die nächste Flawless Round sein für Ryzen, es sei denn, Jack findet hier noch den einen oder anderen Kill, aber das ist auch nur noch Statistik polieren, was hier stattfindet. Er hört die C4s, Schwarzi mit einem aggressiven Take, bekommt hier den letzten Kill und das sieht wirklich sehr, sehr dominant aus gerade.
Das sieht
Du kannst das zwar reinrepellen und versuchen, irgendwie den Plant down zu bekommen, weil Close wartet tatsächlich schon die Shotgun, die jetzt ein bisschen aggressiver geht und tatsächlich auch KS rausnimmt. Damit ist ein weiterer Spieler auf der Attacker-Seite down, noch Daily und Jack, und die sind unfassbar low, haben nur noch 16 Sekunden Zeit. Nero extrem passiv auf den Yellow Stairs, aber jetzt
Genius Goods einen besseren Nutzen gehabt, die gleich Offense zu spielen. Und jetzt ist da Gessus weg mit dem Triple Kill. Holt sich Faith raus, kann dann von Phoenix gestoppt werden, der sich auch noch Scaler zieht. Two-Face holt sich Mix Q und plötzlich wendet sich das Blatt. Das komplette Spiel dreht sich in wenigen Sekunden. Penelope alleine gegen 2, holt sich da noch Phoenix raus, muss sich aber jetzt hier noch irgendwie den guten Two-Face ziehen und den bekommt er nicht mehr, denn der rennt um sein Leben.
Da könnte man Nero finden, das ist dann KS gegen Nero. Nero geht ja auch ein bisschen aggressiv, lässt sich auch direkt da somit mit dem paar Bullet-Shots spotten. Und zieht sich da vorher zurück, geht hier nicht aggressiv rein, weil er muss es ja auch vorerst nicht.
Ich glaube, sie haben die Info da. Schwarzi inside von der Lounge unterwegs Richtung Main, geht jetzt super aggressiv gegen Fano, der sich in den Main Door befindet. Damit ist der Use erstmal down. Das ist eine Menge vertikales Potenzial, was hier verloren geht. Schwarzis Position natürlich aufgedeckt nach diesem Kill. Ein bisschen Kontrolle jetzt über Exhibition. Und direkt die 9 vom Striker, der mit der Vertikalen über den C4 hier einen ganz wichtigen Kill bekommt. Dann verabschiedet sich nämlich auch die Smokes und die Firebolts von Capitao aus dieser Runde. Nero bekommt Jack und da fällt die Attack komplett auseinander. Guckt ihr das an, ein Kill nach dem anderen. Der gesamte Map behält Ryzen die Kontrolle und gehen hier flawless aus dieser zweiten Runde heraus. Die haben richtig Bock auf Console.
Die haben richtig Bock und die legen hier ordentlich vor.
Wirklich auch gut verstecken kann. Zusätzlich ist Max ebenfalls noch mit am Start. Das sind 3:4 Situationen. Ja, schade, Gisela geht jetzt hier down. Somit sind es nur noch 2 Leute, die das hier irgendwie regeln können. Max bekommt hier einen, bekommt hier 2 Kills und dann ist die Runde auf einmal wieder drin. Es sind allerdings nur noch 16 Sekunden, kein Diffuser und Kili kriegt den Headshot auf Striker. Es wird eine 1-1-Situation wieder zwischen Kili und Max. Der ist allerdings im oberen Stockwerk unterwegs und kann über die Vertikale den Diffuser halten. Kili rettet mal wieder die Runde für die Just Chill Guys und bringt ihnen einen Zweiter aufs Scoreboard.
Also mein Herz
Zeit zu arbeiten und vielleicht sogar mit der Smoke was möglich zu machen.
Ich muss sagen, ich verstehe gerade nicht, warum Super die Mische mal verschießt. Man weiß, da werden Drohnen gebunden und man zerschießt sie nicht, aber naja, er will sich was dabei gedacht haben, aber Snoop denkt sich jetzt erstmal, Leon, den hole ich mir raus, den Mute-Jammer. Und jetzt ist es The Red Cannon gegen Coach und am Ende Volto mit dem finalen Kill. Und die Flawless-Runde geht's auf das Konto von Secret Powder und somit 3 Runden hat diese Company bisher gewonnen, 2 Runden Secret Powder. Die nächste Runde.
Wir haben den.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Playday 2 of the European Meisterschaft. I am Maxwell and I am joined here by Herker. Welcome.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
How are you doing on this fantastic evening?
Oh, I am doing great and I'm ready for some good Siege.
Absolutely. We're back here with, we're back here with day 2. We'll be bringing you Kokosi versus Good Intentions today. You were here yesterday as well, casting the games. You already kind of saw what happened on the first play day. Can you run us through what happened there really quickly?
Oh, well, we had a barn burner of a game. We had Maestro Esca versus the Spanish Inquisition that on paper, you know, you would have favored Maestro Esca to win that game. Maybe a little bit more experience on that team, maybe a little bit more recognizable names. However, that game did not end up going quite as well as maybe Maestro Esca would have wanted. It was a barn burner. It went all the way to overtime on the third map and was a fantastic cast and a watch.
Absolutely. So hopefully we can bring the same level of game today. Like I already mentioned, we'll be seeing Kokosi versus Good Intentions, 2 names, or at least Good Intentions, a name that is very familiar for a lot of people in the T2 scene. Kokosi with the core of players coming from Diavoli, so maybe known a little bit from that side as well. Do you have anything that you know about these 2 teams that you think is going to be really important for today's matchup?
I mean, we shall see how the Kokosi, the lineup works out in this game. You know, they've had to change the players as I understand it, and we'll see how well they fare up against Good Intentions, a team that is very competitive at the worst, even on the worst of days. You know, they've recently lost one of their players, Krex, to Team Secret, and they've bounced back pretty nicely, I think, from it, even though having quite maybe middling results at the combine, but still, you know, a very competitive team.
Yeah, absolutely. Good intentions having players like CSK, who's been around for a long time, Bumsy Pozo as well, who's been showing kind of on that more supportive role for a very long time now that he can really step it up a lot. We also have players like Garen, for example, who was on Wild for a very long time. So players that have been kind of kicking around that T1 level, but Kokosi also obviously bringing in players that really have a lot of experience there. So they kind of know their way around a Siege server. We'll be playing another best of 3 today. Would you mind sharing with us which one of those 3 maps we'll be going to for the first game?
We'll be going to Consulate.
Are you a fan
I'm-
of Consulate?
Oh, I'm a very big fan of Consulate. You know, it's one of the most defender-sided maps that we have in the pool. I believe the tier 1 rates is around 60-ish% for the defense. You know, hopefully we'll be seeing a lot of defender-sided aggression. We'll be seeing, interesting strategy being brought up. Maybe having some interesting bans as well. You know, we've been seeing the Denari being banned a lot on this map, and with the new Wamai changes, I'll be expecting to see something quite non-standard.
Alrighty, well, here we go with our very first map. We'll be heading over to Consulate for map 1 of this best of 3 for Kokosi versus Good Intentions. They both played yesterday as well. I'm not sure if you have the results open from yesterday, but for the case that you do, otherwise I've got them as well.
Oh yeah, I don't actually have them open right now. I'll open face it.
Kokosi beat Fight to Win 2-1, and Good Intentions beat Antivatics 2-0. So 2 teams that won their first matchup of the group phase. I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to throw you under the bus like that. But 2 teams that won their first games for the group stages. So they'll both be looking to go 2-0 today. We see the first bans coming through as we go into the seconds. Do you feel like they're non-standard, or do you think this is kind of what you expected?
It's what I kind of expected, but not what I hoped for. You know, we're seeing that Azami ban, for example, on the defense. You know, Azami is an ever-present operator. It's basically good on every site, every map. You know, I'm not surprised to see it get taken out. Along with the Kaid, you know, that makes the walls a bit easier to open up. Kaid's a ban that we don't see that often on Consulate, but it's never a bad ban. And then going over to the attack, you know, the Snake is also a very good operator on a lot of places. You know, you can sit on those repels, you can get information on areas like admin, areas like CEO, and just help your team clear those positions with, you know, basically perfect intel. And then we have the Blackbeard getting taken out, which is, you know, a shield operator. It's a spearhead. It has frags. It has the breaching capabilities on the shield. Just a very good operator overall. And then, you know, it's also not a bad ban whatsoever.
No, of course, and especially with the shields, I'm always quite interested to see if teams only ban one of them, which one of those 3 shields are they going to ban, and I think it also says a little bit about how teams play. Obviously, the Monty being a little bit more of a passive information-gathering shield, while the Blackbeard and the Blitz are a little bit more aggressive, and they can put in a little bit more pressure. Obviously, Blackbeard bringing in those nades as well. Blitz usually being taken for some more kind of rush-oriented takes. We're seeing him being played here in the first round by Kokosi as well, together with a few other interesting operators which you don't necessarily see every time. So it'll be interesting what we see coming out towards this admin side here.
No, my eyes immediately go to that Denari, you know, going unmanned with that lane is very, very good for that, you know, checkers hallway, a coffin hole with the Denari gadget. It's a mean thing to clear out, even if you aren't playing the shield on bending, which I do believe Pozo has the shield right now in breaking. And then we have the Wamai, who also with the buffs makes it even harder to clear out. So that position is a menace right now. And then we have Bumsy on the pulse there, in the first floor emergency exit. You know, he has that C4 in hand to provide that intel. And then if you can clear out all of these things with Bumsy finding one on the Hela, that's a nice spawn pick. You know, we have Cusick on the Tronka here. You know, that Shamik Alonso does stall out the attack for ages upon ages, and it's also a very common ban that we see on Consulate.
Absolutely, the Pulse putting in work there at the beginning to make sure that the repel over on Coffee is taken care of. So you see them pushing in now with the Sense Wall coming down that kind of split hallway. The Denari will have to be dealt with next. But of course, with the buffers coming in recently towards players like Wamai, for example, it's going to be a little bit more challenging to do that. But the Devils manages to get the refrag onto Bumsy here. So the push is going to come through into this hallway, but the fire together with the Denari going to make the push through a little bit more difficult. It's managing to take that control here, and he's going to be faced with the Wamai in front of him as the side of the Kokosi try to work their way through long desk here, work their way into a meeting plan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do believe that Pulse died with the C4 in pocket, so like we're not going to be seeing as much C4 maxing as, you know, tier 1 streams today have seen. Now here on going down to Devils again. Devils picking up 2 in the round. Again, with the C4 in pocket, that means there are 0 for the attack right now, and only one being the Tachanka. I'm curious to finding one as long as YNK, but the plant does go down a 3v2, excuse me, make the 2v2 post now with 40 seconds left on the clock.
All in here with the DMR as well to hold the long angle. Does take some hits from the Tachanka, which does do a lot of damage, but YMK is going to have to try and find a way through as well as they start pushing towards the diffuser with only 30 seconds left to go. But passive positions being taken by both of the attackers on the side of Kokorsi. We're going to have the last 20 seconds to work with here. Shots coming through to manage to pick out both of the defenders. And so as you said, it is a very defender-sided map, but the very first round goes to the side of the attacker. Kokorsi here with a very nicely executed plant on that default plant spot.
Yeah, you know, distracting with the blitz under the push from reception, and then distracting the attention of the enemies, having that Deimos be down below, picking off the C4s, getting another nice kill onto the bandit there, and just getting the plant down immediately. You know, it's a very good attack, and I have nothing else to comment on that. Like, it's just quite clean from the side of Kokorsi here.
Absolutely. I did like to see the kind of plan at the beginning with good intentions as well, that they managed to go for that pick out on that copy repel, take off a lot of pressure to enable the fallback coming in from that kind of coffin and break room area. But after that, they just didn't really have the utility to be able to hold on to the site. So they got pushed back. The Tachanka fire didn't quite hit the mark. But we'll be moving down to basement now. We'll be seeing a mirror on this side of good intentions. Obviously, one of the stronger operators as well here when it comes to denying that kind of main breach push, as we see Garen extend back out into the server side as well. So it looks like they'll be trying to contest as much horizontally as they can and maybe go for a little bit of a roam here with CSK or Kusik, sorry, out on the... Oh my, I forgot the name of her as well. I'm completely blanking on the name. Solus, that's the one. Yes, thank you.
Another operator that you know, I mentioned Bumsy in the first round. I'm going to mention him again. That Ella, they've clearly noticed that the shields could be a problem here, and they're bringing the shield counters out. In Piano right now protecting those hatches, and we'll have to see how he deals with the Monte here. Two Grismod still in pocket, which means that it would be kind of an active like shield denial hold, and he's looking to get into those fights, get into the face of that Monte player.
Marat's here looking to maybe jump into these as well, maybe just covering the window so that no one can peek out aggressively while ALRD is trying to open the wall here. But Kusik just walks into the ADS angle from Marat, and so the Solus is taken down. It wasn't even that important for me to remember the names of how quickly she got taken out, as Marat manages to take the control down here across the electrical hallway. And the other Marats sitting to control that.
Hacking their camera feeds.
Yeah. You know, that soul is going down early, almost going down early, finding a nice pick on the Marauds. But you know, that low HP is a situation where if that soul had gone down, those two Grismods in pocket would have been a sorely missed piece of utility. You know, that would leave the Monty quite unopposed and already finding a pick on the Bumsy. As I said, one Grismod in pocket, operator down.
So still being... Yeah?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the extension being taken care of here as well. Now the mirror being pushed back on YMK also being cleared out. So now it's only Pozo and Garen left here. So they're managing to pick up one onto the Monty. That does take a lot of pressure off the board for them as well. But with 1 minute 30, they need to try and get picks away here. Being open as well to open it a deep angle into the lockers hallway. And they're not quite sure where Pozo's repositioned himself here to. So they don't have the call on that. And Garen and Pozo going to have to hold this hallway together now. You see the flank starting to come out from the Fenrir. Now, the question is if they have the sufficient flank cams, if they know that he's going to be going for this flank, because if they do, they can isolate the 1v1 so easily. So it's risky here, but maybe exact play that they need to pull the back around here.
Yeah. The question is, does the Hibana know? And the answer thus far is no. You know, does, however, find the swing, and we are down to a 3v1 from the side of Pozo. Does have the C4 in pocket, so, you know, it isn't quite hopeless yet, but it'll have to be a hard retake, which unfortunately he misses.
Absolutely. It was a really well played round again here, and I think the flank was the right call for sure. It didn't seem like they had the info, and Hibana just kind of got a good timing on the swing. I did think that Garen, or I thought at least that Garen saw the barrel of Hibana's gun, but it looks like maybe that might be an aspect ratio issue there. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, 4-3 might not be the play because of situations like that. But obviously, that's a preference thing at the end of the day. We see a second attack round go the side of Kokorsi, and I think this is something that most people wouldn't have necessarily expected going into the matchup.
Attackers need to locate and
I like the switch up we're seeing here from I've talked about it 2 rounds in a row. I'm going to mention again Bumsy. You know, the theme of the first 2 rounds I think was dying with utility in pocket. We were dying with those Griffon mines. We were dying with those C4 still in pocket, unused utility. You know, picking off on these high value operators with very impactful gadgets, very impactful utility, and then just not being able to utilize them well enough or getting cut down before that utility actually comes online. And the Goyo is a very nice way of dealing with that, because you know that is just. And forget, you put the canister down and then you go do your own thing, and you can let your teammates play off of those time waste utilities.
For sure, that's kind of been a bit of a trend as well when it comes to utility recently on the defense side, at least playing a lot more of that set down utility when you think about operators like Thorn, for example, or maybe even the Denari, those kind of operators where you can just drop off the traps if you want to, but you can also play them a little bit more actively, like we saw with the Ella last round, for example. But of course now really with a focus on that side there, and we'll be seeing the Monty coming out once again to kind of hold that peak from the window. So we see now the hard breach gadgets being used as it's been reinforced off, and a similar take that will be coming out from Kokorzi here early on.
I'm hoping that the Solus music has a little bit more impact in this round. You know, it did get cut down quite early into the round last time, and I'm wondering what the strategy will be here. Will it be like a vertical plant denial for the gadget that's get nated and kicked off early again, with the Solus having zero impact in the round?
It's a fantastic start to the game from ALRD. He's 5-0 here in the first 2 rounds, and he might not be done for this round yet either. So now Bumsy, he's going to have to try and work to hold this Visa control as he sees that the Visa window has been left alone, but there is still someone on the upside down. Rapal Marat's getting the pick off the Pozo there from that angle. And so they're back down in a man disadvantage once again. The Goyo is being popped here to try and fall back a little bit. The own barricade and the own Goyo is going to box him in here. So now Garen's going to have to fight for his life for at least the next 20 seconds. He doesn't have a way to fall back, and a lot of attacks encouraging on his position slowly. I'm not sure if they have information on him as of now, as Bumsy gets the call here from the Dokkaebi of Marats. They do know that he's close, and they do know that he's stuck in that hallway.
Does let the phone blow up, so cannot be called again, but that does leave 2 other targets, you know, Garen and YMK for the Dokkaebi calls, with 3 pests still in pocket and a C4. You know, that again is like the only way I can currently see of dealing with the Montaigne here. You know, still quite high on HP, 75%-ish, with a lot of utility in pocket. You know, we're looking to see if that C4 lands and saves them the round here.
Monty is going to be continuing to put pressure on from the server side, as well as the utility comes out now towards that hallway. And I mean, while they do have a lot of control here, pushing this site always isn't the most comfortable thing, because you do end up filtering down these 2 kind of hallways. While the Monty is great for cutting off a lot of those angles, he doesn't put on as much pressure as you'd maybe like, just because he can't take any gunfights himself without ADSing into a shield. So now the first shots comes out towards the connector side here. Bumsy taking that engagement. Oh, sorry, Garen as well. Impact's coming through, and the server play is going to be in the first gunfight. Manages to pick off one Bumsy here. He doesn't quite get down, but that was with the refrag and Olive also onto Garen. And so now it's YMK who gets picked up from the hatch. And it's a 3-0 split on the attacking side of Consulate. I'm not a man for the history necessarily. This doesn't seem like something that you would have expected, or that we've maybe even seen too many times in the competitive history of Rainbow Six.
Yeah. You know, a 3-0 on console attack is a bit of an anomaly, you know. I'm seeing a lot of the same things that we saw yesterday from the side of Meisterschaft on Good Intentions, you know, those crosses not quite being held to the standard that you would hope, those early opening picks going untraded, and I am not surprised to see the Montaigne getting banned here. It's been a nuisance for these it's been a nuisance for these defenders for a long time now here, and it'll make the push itself a little bit harder to stop. You know, you won't have that spearhead, you won't have that living drone to gather intel on you, and maybe you'll be able to get away with a little bit more of these kind of ratty plays, you know, holding these crosses, you know, getting those trades down.
Protect your bombs from being defused by
We'll be going back to the top floor, so a site where it might be a little bit easier to hold these kind of crossfires, especially once it starts going towards that soda taken about that front desk. We'll be seeing the Wamai come out once again. Obviously, a recently buffed operator as well. He won't be taking the shield with him this time, but the C4 instead. So for those of you who don't pay as much attention to the patch notes necessarily, that is something for you that might be a little bit surprising, that Wamai has the ability to bring a C4. He does also have a shield now, as well as getting an extra Wamai charge and getting those to himself quicker. Once the round starts, he'll already have 3 in pocket with another not too far behind. Just making it a little bit more difficult for the attackers to clear out positions like that soda or wherever. The shield is going to be placed by Pozo in the end. And of course, the Goyo and the Minari being operators, which already make it very difficult to push out from the side. That C4 also a very typical play being played inside of that kind of admin break room, with those tosses out onto the windows, which were taken really quickly last round by Kokorzi, especially with that blitz coming in, and we see a very similar lineup from them as well.
another underrated part of the Denari. Like you mentioned it partly, but it's just how fast those magnets do come online. I played in a custom game. It is roughly a minute into the round that you have all 7 already online, and that just makes it a very difficult thing to clear out these positions. As well with the fact that you know, Kokosi isn't bringing a Twitch, they're not bringing a Bravo, they're not bringing the IQ to clear out this you know, shootable utility. And I'm very interested to see what that Womai gadget does catch in the end of the day. Maybe those capital charges, those grenades, you know, just stopping the momentum of this admin-sided push in its tracks.
That being said, Zofia has also gained a buff, which a lot of people have deemed a little bit ridiculous, with her now having 3 concussions and 3 impacts, but none of those will be used this round after the first concussion was used. Brimsy gets a peek here, and this is the first man advantage situation, I believe, for Good Intentions so far this map. So maybe they found a lifeline into this game now, and they're going to have to try and convert that man advantage. It's definitely a good start into the round for them.
I do believe that pick was over to the skyline portion of the map, if I am not wrong. You know, that's another position where like you are holding a passive cut there, and not getting traded off of that isn't, you know, the worst thing, but you would still like to have that utility in pocket. You would still like to have that cut being watched. You know, now the perception side of the area is perfectly fine to play for the defenders. They don't have to worry about that skylight player anymore, and that gives them so much more room to breathe than they normally would have. Now that one might get catching the Gone 6, that shield in vending being alive and well. Another one might get it catching the grenade, that shield still being well and alive, with Devils finding Kusik again, the opening death for the side of Good Intentions.
So it's a man count being equalized here. The shield has been taken care of, if I can see it properly, and it looks like YMK has managed to fall back to the long desk. Here we see that Sense Gadget coming through, and Devils just with an aggressive push gets a third for the round. Incredible shots coming through there. He does get traded eventually by Garen. But Pozo and Garen left with it all to do once again as the blitz of Marat's pushes through, gets one onto Garen, and now puts the shield back down. Followed with a pre-fire around the corner. It's looking like an absolute blowout, even though the round started so well for the side of Good Intentions. Kokosi just keeping on back, coming back, firing aggressively in here with a 4th attack round on Consulate.
Yeah, that man count advantage for the side of Good Intentions not being converted there, which is it's an interesting thing to see. You know, 4 attacks for the side of Kokosi on Consulate, 4 straight attacks might add as well. It's a bit perplexing, really. I'm beginning to question the value of the Solis that's bringing in there. You know, it doesn't have a lot of impact in these rounds. You know, maybe that intel is being found out, but you know, dying so often without the opportunity to stop those plants, maybe from below, without the opportunity to really stop that Deimos from tracking you out. You know, getting into that gunfight on the first floor. It is not being brought here in the 5th round, and it's being swapped for the Clash, which I kind of like here. You know, it's a more passive operator. It's something to stop the shields from pushing into your face, and it does reinforce that presence on site, which is, I think, a good choice for the side of Good Intentions.
I do also like that the Thorn is being brought here, because I feel like a lot of what Kokosi are doing at the moment is just kind of finding a gap and walking at the side of Good Intentions. They're just kind of isolating a single position, kind of finding where they want to go. We saw it here with the Sense Gadgets, for example, that they cut off the sight line over from that meeting side, and then just kind of walking down that long desk once the utility's been cleared, because there's not so many traps being brought, apart from, of course, the Denari, but once that's taken care of, it doesn't really do much else. That kind of was enabled, and the Clash and the Thorn, the 2 operators, which will make that a little bit more difficult. Did say that we're being a little bit more passive here, but I'm not sure if Rumsey got that note. He plays a really aggressive peek here. Does manage to get back with the C4 cover in hand.
I mean, as we talked about with that basement defense, you know, the Glory gadgets are, you know, set and forget, so he can go for these kind of risky plays if he does want to. You know, the Vector still being a very good gun, high fire rate. You know, at the end of the day, you only need 1 bullet. With these guns are being set in coffin, I quite like that. You know, we shall see how Kokosi, you know, responds to this attack. There is still the Deimos on board, and that Deimos from below has been quite effective in these top floor attacks in the past year.
For sure, in general, Devil's also, you know, Deimos brings so much utility, but having someone that's confident as well and will just take those gunfights when he wants to and when he needs to, that's also what you want to have, because if your Deimos is a little bit too passive, sure, it gives you good information, but you can't really do that much off of the info if you're just calling to your teammates. We've seen it in Pro League a few times on this map especially, where the Deimos will just kind of sit on the roof and track and give information back for his teammates while they're trying to clear out from that admin side. But I find it quite nice that Devil's here playing a little bit more aggressively. You see him down on that solo lurk position as well, down here in Visa. So he's going to be trying to work forwards and then maybe clear that long desk position, playing that verticality using his pistol once he gets a track. But yet again, we'll be seeing that same kind of admin-sided clear. I mean, it's worked well 2 times, so why not a 3rd time? as we see the same gadgets coming down from the sense yet again.
One thing I'm noticing is that the time will become a problem at one point for the side of Kokosi. You know, we have that smoke on board now, we have that clash, we have those Goyo gadgets, and if they're not cleared within a timely manner, you know, we could just run out the clock on Kokosi. You know, it might be a real possibility that they cannot get the plant down with a fantastic use of the Nomad utility from March, clearing that clash shield. That is problem number one, absolutely. Erased from the game. We still do have the Goyo canisters, we still do have those toxic babes from smoke. We'll have to see how they're utilized. The attackers now have a very good control over that checkers hallway over to reception, and you know, this is a very good power point when you were able to swing into meeting. I think is that called it. Being taken on. Also, you know, the smoke being often thought of as a more passive operator. You know, Pozo also didn't get that memo, just swinging out with the SMG-11. Still toxic babes in pocket for the plant denial. With 15 seconds on the clock, it's not looking good for Marats on the Nomad.
Absolutely, Pozo showing exactly what he has been showing throughout the whole T2 season here. Coming in clutch for his team when he needs it most. He does get taken out in the end by Marats, but Garen with the refrag, and so Good Intentions finally managed to win a round on the defense side here. I was starting to get a little bit worried that we would go through the entire defense side of Consulate without a single round on the side of Good Intentions. But they have managed to do it, and I'm really glad that they have, because it looked like for a second that Kokosi were just bringing all the right answers that they needed to. As soon as Good Intentions picked away from the Wamai, they had the Nomad, they had all of that utility, and they could use it so freely when it came to that checkers hallway. So it made it really difficult for the Clash to play in that position. But with a masterclass from Pozo, who looked like he was completely stuck and looked like he was pinched out perfectly by Kokosi, getting two absolutely fantastic shots that bring the round back from the depths for Good Intentions. And a 4-1 split, one more round before we swap sides.
I do like the pivot in strategy from the side of Good Intentions. You know, we were seeing earlier in the game, we were seeing these active, you know, operators. They were going for these kind of heavy roams and you know, going for these kind of early fights, hoping to get the opening pick, playing aggressively, going for the trying to leverage their own gun skill. And now they kind of realized that, you know, Kokosi aren't going to buckle under that. They were bringing these shields, they were getting the opening engagements in their favor here, and picking off defenders in a very timely manner. And now they've swapped to the time waste denial strategies, you know, bringing the smoke, bringing the Goyo, bringing the clash, I mean.
Attackers are moving to defuse the bomb.
And I think it's a very good pivot here. You know, they've been wasting that time very well. They've been forcing him to clear, you know, large portions of the map. And, you know, and last round, it came down like, what, 10 seconds on the clock when the final pick was being gotten.
Absolutely, and that also came in with the Clash obviously having a little bit of an unfortunate death when it comes to the utility of the Nomad usage there. Of course, well done from the side of course as well. Going back to the basement now, we see the main breach being open and Devils rotating away straight away, so this is not going to be the main point of their attack. They're just trying to open up a little bit of pressure here to make sure that the players on site don't feel quite as comfortable as we see drones coming around towards that piano side. Marad's opening some more windows around the benches side of the map. So we see the main push coming down that server side once again, where they've been so successful in these previous rounds as well. It's nice to see always that these teams do work on opening up all that phantom pressure that we speak about oh so often, making sure that they have alternatives just in case the server push ends up being difficult to pull off and not being able to kind of get through there. So they're just opening up everything here and making it a little bit more difficult for Good Intentions to know exactly what their intentions are.
As we see the blitz drop yellow stairs here going fast, you know, pivoting that push, no longer going for the server side of the map. You know, I'm very interested to see how this Clash will deal with that blitz. You know, is the Clash going to be positioned in the correct spot to be able to handle it? As we see Garen going for a very nice deep flank here with the blitz right behind him on those spiral stairs.
Wolves manages to get the first pick here. Not necessarily something you would expect from your Thermite to be pulling off the entry frags. But when you're pushing such aggressive entries all over the map, it can come down to anyone as it's been jiggled down here from Garen on the top of the spiral stairs. Another aggressive play from Bunzi here, who has the vertical. Here's the vertical being made, but Alpha manages to pick him off, and it's just not working out for Good Intentions at the moment, as they're down 2 players once again. They have the information on Garen here. The shield is in the way there, so Marat doesn't lose his life. And Garen is completely isolated from the push here. Devils picks him up as well as Pozo refrags onto Hella with Kusik getting one to ALRD. And it's another 3v2 situation as we had in the previous round on the basement already.
It's not a lost fight for the side of Good Intentions. You know, you still have those toxic babes in pocket. You still have the Clash shield up And you know, time is still running out. 40 seconds on the clock. That isn't a whole lot to, you know, break this process here on, you know, Lumber, on the hallway. You know, it is very much still a winnable fight here, as we see Marat's pushing with the shield, getting a blind onto Pozo, and getting the kill on top of that. You know, now that the shield isn't working in the favor of Cusick, you know, it is very good in a 5v5 to slow down defenders, but, you know, in a 1v3, you have to put that away. You have to pull out the gun. That, you know, cost you time with what that Cusick just did not have there.
Yeah, exactly what you say. I don't really understand why Cusick doesn't put that shield down so that he can play gun up. If you're already in a man disadvantaged situation, the last thing you want is your shield operator not to be able to shoot back, effectively putting you into a 3v1 with Cusick being a bit of a glorified drone there towards the end of the round. But nevertheless, we go into maybe the single most unexpected round swap of Consulate that I've ever seen in my life, at least, with Kokosi going into the defense, having won 5 rounds. This is a round swap that you typically see the other way around. Kokosi have managed to pull it off on the attack somehow.
Yeah, you know, that 5-1 scoreline isn't like all too, you know, it is very familiar for Consulate, but, you know, as you said, it is often the other way around. You know, going to your defense with a 4-round lead is a very, very comfortable position to be in here. Now, as we see the bans come through, we have the Ying and the Glass for the side of the attack, and the Kite and Azami for the side of the defense. You know, same side of defense bans here. You know, people really don't like that Azami on this map apparently, and the Kite to keep those hatches open, I see. But you know, those attack bans, you know, those are very, very execute or anti-execute focused bans. You know, that Glass seeing through the smoke, that Ying being able to throw those gadgets out and blind the attackers. You know, I feel like that's a bit targeted for that window plant in particular here.
Yeah, for sure, the window plant is definitely one of the more dangerous things that you have to be aware of on the side of the defense. But also once you get back down to the basement and, you know, going for those executes onto the main breach, being able to flash into Piano to take control of that, these are all kind of things, kind of pocket plays which you can typically see where some teams just decide, hey, this is not something we want to deal with. We don't want to have to worry about these kind of explosive plays, and so we're just going to get rid of these operators, kind of force the attackers into more standardized takes, work more into the utility side of it, because that's something that we feel a little bit more comfortable in dealing with. What might end up being a little bit uncomfortable here as well is when Pumsy gets taken out right at the beginning in spawn here with ALRD, sorry, with a spawn peek here from the bottom of Yellow Stairs, as well as the run out being prepared up on that meeting breach. And so we'll be seeing some really aggressive plays from Kokosi here. Have to wait and see if they stick with that kind of general trend now that they've gotten the opening pick. It's not a great start for Good Intentions on the attacking side here.
You know, the sledge falling down early isn't the end of the world. It does have important utility, does have those frag grenades, does have that hammer that could come in useful, but, you know, there are more important operators in the lineup of Good Intentions here. My eyes go to that Capital, for example. You know, we talked about the execute as Cusick does get the trade onto already. But, you know, that Capital bring a whole lot of utility, bring that Gauntlet, bring that DMR, bring the impact APs in this case, bring that fire, that smoke. You know, if that, for example, had fallen down early, with a very interesting gunfight being taken over to the side of Bathroom here, with Cusick, you know, peeking those angles, and the Defenders peeking him back from several different angles. You know, as we see the Fenrir, as we see the smoke, you know, circling around him, trying to find that pick onto the Twitch with, again, very important utility in her pocket.
And that's the definition of siege timing that we see also often. Cusick just not being able to get those peaks off when he needs to. What I do find very interesting on the side of Kokosi is that we know that 2 operators are kind of aware of that angle, and we immediately see a 3rd one walking into it as well to kind of put on even more pressure there. You see the entry now over into that spiral staircase, and Garen manages to pick off the Goyo of Hela. So now they have a man advantage situation again, which they have had once before so far in the game, and they didn't manage to convert it. Well, I guess twice with the one round that they won. They're going to have to be careful here that they manage to actually take into that control here, because they haven't really established much of that control. They've gotten the picks from outside of the building, so they're going to be working in from Spiral here. 3 of their attackers walking into Spiral here to try and get something here as the smoke of Marat swings down, but gets hit with a DMR. DMK manages to pick off the other Marats here on the Fenrir. A 4v2 situation now as they push through. Marats with a smoke onto YMK. The floor ban coming out on the Devils. That's a 3v1 for the smoke to clutch.
You know, Devils with a single Valkyrie cam in pocket still. You know, Marat does get the revive here off, I do believe, with a single Toxic Babe still in pocket. You know, again, not an impossible take. Cusick does get Devils there, and Pozo does get Marat. You know, that went from a very, very good situation to be for the side of Kokosi to a very, very scary one. Fight fast.
I've seen entire seasons of EML, of APL, of SAL, whatever, go through and pass with less attack rounds won in total than we've seen in this one singular map between Kokosi and Good Intentions. And I honestly don't know what to expect anymore, because Good Intentions, they started off really poorly, of course, with that entry pick being given away from the sledge there onto already.
Defenders,
And
protect
they've
your
managed to
bombs
go
from being
around and turn it
defused by
around when
attackers.
previously in the rounds, as soon as they lose the man count, they just lose another and another and another. So maybe I missed something, maybe there was a change, maybe the updates to the operators that are hardly even being played is exactly what this map needed to suddenly become one of the most attacker-sided maps in the entire map pool. Maybe there's something that I've missed here, I'm not sure, but I'm all here for it, because I love it when these games stay a little bit more unpredictable, when you don't know what's going to happen next, and so I'm all here for it. I really hope that Good Intentions manage to pull something off here. We're one round away from a match point for Kokosi, but Good Intentions will be thinking, hey, if they manage to do it, then why can't we?
Yeah.
5
You know,
seconds
it
left.
could be that, you know, Good Intentions and Kokosi have both cracked the secret of consulate attacking and have a 170% win rate on it now. I myself, however, have a simpler explanation to offer, and that is just over-peaking from the side of Kokosi, over-aggression here. We saw that similar kind of trend out from Good Intentions, you know, playing a little bit too aggressive for here. Consulate is very powerful as a map, not only for the fact that it offers opportunities for defender aggression, you know, those spawn peaks, those runouts, you know, there's a lot of windows to watch for, same with maps like Buffet. But these crosses on the sites itself are quite hard to break. You have a lot of power positions that you can play, and a lot of areas that it is very hard for the attackers to cross safely. And we're not really seeing that, you know, we didn't see that, you know, Checkers side play for the side of Kokosi there as they were pushing for reception. You know, that cross being held from Checkers or from Bending could have invalidated that push quite early, or at least made it a hell of a lot harder to push through.
We're seeing a very different approach to the attack as well here from Good Intentions, as we see Bumsy walking up with his sledge shotgun here. Made it further up the yellow stairs already than he did last time, but he will be encountered by yet another shotgun from already here. The Thorn replacing another gadget here just to make it a little bit more uncomfortable for Bumsy to walk up as he does turn, and so he knows that there's a shotgun playing close, making the whole situation a little bit more predictable for him as he takes that control. And so now that's just something that, of course, they have to keep in the back of their mind as the pressure comes in from Garen on the other side of the map. So they're gonna have to deal with this kind of split pressure here coming from two sides, with Koza up on the skylight as well to cut off any rotations through that front desk. And so a slightly different approach to Kokosi, who went for a little bit more of a linear take, as we see Good Intentions trying to kind of play for the gaps, which is something that they're very known for. It's also very refreshing to see that different styles of attack can still work out on this map here. But they are stalling a little bit when it comes to the admin take, because let it be known 2 minutes of the round have already passed, and the only Good Intentions player that's actually in the map is Bumsy.
Yeah, you know, that time will be a problem. We do have the Goyo gadgets on board. We still do have the smoke. I like the addition of and you know, Garen going down there on the demos is unideal. You know, I do like the inclusion of the IQ here. You know, we've seen that Henry replayed, we've seen that Thorn replayed, and these traps, as I say, I cast a Curse Marats, dying on the Fenrir here, the Cusick. But, you know, we've seen those traps be quite effective here in slowing down the attack, and that IQ does bring a lot of, like, you know, intel gathering for that. You know, you can sit on the roof and you can give the Twitch exact specifications on where to go with these. As we see a scrappy gunfight happen on the side of Bending, you know, with Bumsy picking up Devils as well on the other side, with and Pozo finding already, you know. These rounds, with the Marats hitting a disgusting shot on the YMK here, with the plant going down with and Pozo covering it from the side of the bathroom.
Go for the swing here. He just about sees the diffuser. He's got the wrong gun in hand. He manages to get one, but Pozo with a refrag at the end. I was about to say the smokes out on this site are really giving us something to watch today, but the line just there available to make sure that the round does go through for Good Intentions, and it's another attack win onto that top floor. The site has been played, I think, 5 times now, with 4 attacker wins in this game. Good Intentions slowly crawling it back. And as someone who coaches myself, you know, I find the mental game of Siege very, very interesting, right? You already spoke about how aggressive the map of Consulate can be for the spawn peaks and these kinds of things, but also how good those crossfires are. And a lot of times that kind of dissuades teams from going for the aggressive plays, because if they think, hey, if I go for the spawn peak and I lose my life, it becomes more difficult for the rest of my team to hold these crossfires late on in the round. So it's always interesting to see those kinds of things interacting on a smaller scale. But what's also interesting is when you have such an unexpected result, like 5 attack rounds being won in the very first split of the map, how does a team deal with that pressure? How do they go into that second half? Do they think, hey, we've basically got this game in the bag, we're set here? You know, they've got already in Devils putting up really good numbers when it comes to kills as well. Their strategies work fantastically. Do they kind of go into it now and they think, hey, we're set here, we can kind of chill, and then you get those overpeaks that you mentioned? Or is there a way that you can kind of go into it and think, hey, we need to keep this up, we need to make sure that we convert these rounds now? Because at the moment, it looks like, of course, they're kind of falling more into that first bracket.
Yeah, I mean, to quote a caster that I love very much, there are lies, there are damn lies, and then there are statistics. You know, that roughly 60% win rate for the defense of the console is only a statistic. It's like it is a trend, but it is not something that is carved in stone. You know, it's not like you can't find these anomalous, you know, sides of attacking on console. It is very possible. It just depends on how good a team is feeling on a day and what the strategy actually is here. You know, if you're the side of Kokosi, you have a 5-1 lead on your attack, you're going into the defense, you're thinking, oh, we have this in the bag, like, you know, it's fine. And that overconfidence, you know, could breed some problems. But then again, for the side of good intentions, you know, I feel like you may be thinking like, hey, Kokosi just did a 5-1 attack half, why can't we also do that? You know, I don't think it is a problem unless you let it become a problem for you. With Pozo finding the first pick on there already a fantastic, as you said, a fantastic game thus far, dying first with no trade inside.
Absolutely, and it looks like a bit of the curse for the Soulless is here, because Good Intentions kind of have the same problem on the defense. They're Soulless, a pick that they bring a lot because you can make those aggressive plays. You could go for those runouts. It's a really strong operator for flanks because you can see where the flank cams are up. But both teams are struggling with that Soulless staying alive long enough for that even to become a factor. As we see Good Intentions going for a very vertical take here, not as much horizontal pressure as we saw from the side of Kokosi when they were attacking the same spot, as Hella gets caught out here as well in Visa. That's a position that the side of Good Intentions also struggled with. Sequel coming out and not finding anyone here, so Marat is going to try and see if he can get anyone through the verticality, as Devils manages to pick up Bunzi on the refrag and retaking that Visa control as well. The verticality from top floor just about missing the mark, with Marat taking damage as well back onto site.
Yeah, those players on the side of the defense, excluding the Mira, being very low, with the main breach now being opened up, and those, you know, as you said, those 3 verticality operators being brought. You know, you have the Ram, you have the Demos, you have the Buck, with the hatches already being open. You know, that's a lot of pressure on the side of the defense. You know, there's not a lot of positions you can actually play on site and be safe. You know.
Verticality being completely open now, also allowing the mirror window to be popped here, just to put a little bit more pressure here onto Marat, who's playing deep into Kitchen. Verticality not quite being able to see him, with that back corner of Kitchen being mainly safe from the verticals, but obviously also meaning that he can't do as much to deny the plant should it come in. And with 20 seconds here, they're going to have to try and work towards something here. The hatch drop is being considered here by the side of Pozo, and Garen, I believe, is also on that hatch as the flashbangs come through and the drop comes through. Kusik as well going for the plant now here. Pozo managed to pick off Devils. The nade indicator here, red, and it's going to blow up Marat as well, as Garen picks up the last kill onto the other Marats. There is 2 of them, and it keeps on confusing me every single round. Both of them playing the same gun as well, different operators. But it's 5-4 now, with Good Intentions staging the comeback. And maybe the only thing that was less likely to happen than a 5-1 attack split for the side of Kokosi is a flawless comeback for the side of Good Intentions on the attack as well.
Yeah, you know, having 2 Marats in the lobby with the same gun isn't the only confusing thing that's going on here. You know, this is a very, very non-standard type of consulate that we're seeing right now. You know, only 1 round being won for the defense here. That is a ridiculous statistic for a map like Consulate.
Yeah, everything is wrong. Everything is upside down. I don't know what's going on anymore. Is this even still Rainbow Six Siege, or is this a completely different esport at this point? Are we all humans? Is this just a simulation? Find out this and more on the next episode of Rick and Morty.
To locate and defuse as
As we
many
go
bombs
back
as
into
they
a
can.
top floor defense again, this does kind of seem to be the site where most of the players seem the most comfortable when it comes to the side of the defense, at least, with it being by far the most played site. We haven't really seen any of the split site or of Piano being played yet. But that being said, it's not been super successful either, with, to be fair, the 1 defense round that was won being up on this site. But at the same time, at a certain point, is there maybe any value in going for one of those tertiary sites? Because clearly
Attackers
both
have located
teams
a
know
bomb.
the keys when it comes to the top floor.
Yeah, it all depends on how comfortable the defense is on those tertiary sites. You know, we've seen in Pro League that teams will bring out the piano, they will bring out the split side, and they can be quite effective here. It's, you know, the top floor is a double-sided, or double-edged sword, rather. You know, you're maybe more comfortable defending on it, you maybe have better strategies on it, you maybe way more familiar with the places and the crosses and the angles and the utility placement that you need on that side, but so is the attack. No, I can guarantee that all of these players have attacked that top floor side probably thousands of times in their lives, and they know what to do. You know, throwing people off with going to a quote-unquote bad site, like for example Spiker loves to do on the bar in Clubhouse, you know, doing that is a bit of a gamble. At the same time, you know, you're testing the validity of your own strategies, but also throwing off the attack. You know, they maybe have to, you know, go for those attacker repicks. They maybe have to, you know, revise their strategy, change their spawns, and that's all time and brain power that you have to take away from, you know, planning the attack itself. You know, it is very much a double-edged sword.
It's nice to see here as well. Now we're seeing a little bit more of that utility clearing lineup. We're seeing both of those drone operators with the Flores and the Twitch being brought, seeing a nice lineup here maybe as well for the jump in. The mute jammer unfortunately being in the way and making sure that we can't see any lovely drone pod call coming in from the side of Bumsy here. But the goal of Good Intentions seems to be to clear out the utility here, seeing that there's a lot of traps being brought on the side of Kokosi with the Fenrir, with the Goyo, with the Thorn, the mute being taken out with the verticality of Garen, who takes an aggressive position up on those Visa stairs. As I was saying, they're trying to clear out this utility and kind of allow that same playstyle that Kokosi were bringing out on the attack, where they can just kind of walk at the defense, not have to worry too much about the defensive traps that are being brought to slow them down. So with 1 minute 30, we see them slowly starting to work forwards here on the Coffin side, a little bit slower than Kokosi were on a lot of the takes. And that smoke shotgun from Marat is going to be the next big obstacle when it comes to pushing into that default plant spot. We've seen the smokes being incredibly clutch here already so far, as that soda position needs to be cleared before they can push out onto long desk.
And again, you know, time is a factor that has to be considered here on the side of Good Intentions. You know, we have a minute on the clock. We have 2 toxic bags in pocket. We, you know, still have those Fenrir traps up. We have those Thorn traps up. We have the green guy, Goyo is the name of the operator. We have to have those Goyo traps up, and you know, all of that does take time. You know, a Goyo trap is 20 seconds off the clock. A smoke toxic babe is 10 seconds off the clock, with Marat's finding Garen on the yellow stairs there. You know, one thing that we haven't touched upon yet is those bans as Pozo finds at the head of Hela. You know, that demo is being taken out and being substituted with a buck as Bumsy finds the head of Marat's there again with these stairs. You know, playing verticality with the buck is a very, you know, old and tried and true strategy. As Marat's fighting Bumsy, I don't even know how you see that. You know, we're going into a post plant now, a 3v1, looking a bit dodgy for the side of Kokosi here on the defense.
Sure, Smoke doesn't manage to close it out despite getting a lovely pick, as you had mentioned already. But the Dokkaebi just being able to kind of hold that long angle there on the plant. The Smoke kind of still almost downing the planter as well. But CSK did start the plant early enough to be able to get that through despite the ticks from the Smoke. And so we do see now the 5-5 split. They've come back down from 5-1. Many people probably would have counted them out already when they saw the 5-1 side and Kokosi on the defense. But since that round swap, Kokosi have not managed to bring a single round to the board. And so now both teams are only 1 round away from a match, or from a map point, sorry, as this is of course the best of 3. And so this is absolutely fantastic. This is exactly what you want to see from their first map. They're keeping it as interesting as they can. And this is the map pick of Kokosi. We haven't really spoken about which team had picked the maps yet, and so also the side. And of course, when you pick a map like Consulate, you will kind of accept that you start on the weaker side, you start on the attack, and that is a risk that you need to kind of take into consideration as well. Kokosi clearly had a plan to deal with that. But what they won't have expected is that even though their attack went so well, is that Good Intentions would be able to fight back like this. And you do really have to start thinking about the nerves from Kokosi, because not only have they given away a 4-round lead here on the stronger side of the map, on the statistically stronger side of the map, clearly in this game it doesn't quite count as such, but also they're going to the map pick of Good Intentions next. And so that's something that'll be playing in the back of the mind of a lot of these players as well.
Yeah. You know, touching back on those bans, we see the Valkyrie being taken out on the side of defense. You know, I feel like there's clearly a read from Good Intentions that that Kokosi does want to go for these, you know, intel strategies and C4ing from below on that top floor. As we see the pulse being brought out, you know, I don't know if you noticed, but the pulse was hiding inside of that box breach. for the entirety of the prep phase, and then it did drop down into piano after the action phase started. So hiding that operator pick, not having the demos to maybe hunt those the roamers as effectively as you normally would. That pulse could become a problem in the late round.
Starting shot zone.
Absolutely, and we saw the Pulse already being dangerous on the defense side of Good Intentions, but it looks like they do have a read on him. I'm not sure if he saw his arm there coming through the wall just a little bit. The Pulse does know that he's being held here by Garen, and so he's going to take a little bit more of a passive angle as the drone comes out as well to make sure that the Pulse doesn't cause too much damage. And it's not going to be Garen's job necessarily to get the kill here, but just to make sure that the Pulse who's playing below can't feed back all of that info back to his teammates and potentially even get a C4 kill. As he is spotted out by the drone here if it is active. Garen's still downstairs, or sorry, he's gone upstairs now to tell us, and so he's kind of ignored the Pulse now. I'm not sure if he knows that he's still down there, so that could cause problems later on the round, as you'd already mentioned.
Yeah, that C4, C4 maxing, it's the new meta. We see that a lot, and that is a prime way to deny the plant. If you're not going to die to those Goya canisters, if you're not going to die to those smoke toxic babes, a C4 will get the job done, dealing a lot of damage if thrown correctly, and with a pulse scanner in hand, you will throw it correctly since you will have perfect intel on the defenders, or the attackers, I mean.
1K pushing through here, Pozo getting one pick onto Devils. That is that pulse gone, so the C4 isn't going to be able to do any damage anymore as they work towards this meeting side. Once again, they know there's one behind the desk, and of course, 1K has the benefit of having the Black Witch in front of them, but they're not sure if there's someone else in the closet. They see him now with the smoke. He's being doubled up here. Kusik manages to pick off Maritz on the Fenrir as the shots come through, and now Maritz is locked here into this small closet with the verticality as well from Garen here. Alapod managing to pick off the Blackbeard, and so that's the shield off the board as well. And now the side of Good Intentions will have to push in slowly as the call comes through to Maritz, putting his HP down to 50 and making sure that he can't throw a smoke canister, and he has no sound on the plant because of the sound of that fire. Kusik managing to pick up another one onto the green guys, you so beautifully called him here, of Hela. And now it's a 2v3 already with a beautiful shot onto Bumsy. He swings around to try and get another. He sees him run onto the user stairs, but doesn't quite manage to get the shots off with a free fire now onto Kusik, and it's a 2v2 situation from a 2v4 as he swings around. Can he get another pick? But we see here still Garen on that verticality. The smoke canister doing so much damage to him, but not quite managing to pick him off. He doesn't know where the diffuser's coming through, and he manages to get it just in time. The smoke canister doing just enough to throw him off, but he had the balls. Pros don't fake, and although this might not be Pro League, he's definitely shown that he doesn't want to fake it either.
Yeah, being a pro is a state of mind, and, having the absolute goal to stick that diffuse, not being afraid of the buck below you, just going for broke, you're all in. And that is beautiful, and, having the strength or bravery to do those types of plays is what you're needed here, and that is the second round in this entire map gone over to the side of the defense off of a beautiful play.
Both times it's the smokes as well, using the smoke canisters maybe not in the most conventional way there, because he did have his sound being covered by that Dokubi core, by the flashbang as well, so the smoke didn't have any info that the plant was going down, but the smoke canisters that he kept in pocket and kind of managed to save because he didn't have info on the plant are exactly what managed to win him the round in the end, because it just delayed the Buck by half a second. The Buck had to make a decision whether or not he wanted to go forward, and that short half a second of hesitation is exactly what allowed him to win the round in the very end. So it's actually very interesting to see how something that was a good play by Good Intentions originally is actually what kind of ended up losing them the round in the end. Then maybe if he had just thrown the smoke and didn't have it to deny the cover from below towards the end, it would have looked differently. But alas, we will never know, as Kokosi managed to take the map-to-map point, which they will have wanted to do a lot earlier. But if they manage to bring it over the line here with a 7-5, I'm sure they won't be too upset about that.
A victory is a victory, even if you throw a massive lead like Kokosi did that on that 5-1. They allowed it to be brought back to a 5-5, and as you said, if they go for a 7-5, I think they'd be extremely happy with this. We're heading back down to the basement here. We've seen this a lot in this game. One thing we're actually seeing here is that Mai with that shield, and we've talked about that operator already at length. Receiving some big changes, getting his shield back. Utility meta, baby. I swear, Bikini Body would. He was salivating when he looked at those patch notes. But, I'm very interested to see how that shield is being used. It's still in the pocket of Mirage, actually, on the roam here in Spiral Stairs, now going back downwards, I think.
It's a little bit risky, especially when we've spoken about good intentions already dying too much with the utility kind of still in pocket, not being placed down. But Maritz does manage to make it back to site. The shield still hasn't been placed, so I'm not sure what he's waiting for exactly. Maybe he's waiting to see if good intentions commit to a certain side before he places it, so he doesn't have to rotate it around later on. You see him with 5 my gadgets in pocket as well. Who won't have anything left in pocket though is Devil's number 1 as he gets taken out. The Fenrir here, no bandit on side here to be twinning with the guns. It'll be a 4 versus 5 situation here for good intentions to work to bringing it all the way into overtime. Yeah,
now we should be well. You said that the Fenrir didn't have anything in pocket, but unfortunately for the side of Kokosi, I think he did. If I saw correctly, there's 2 Fenrir mines not placed at all, and with I think 1 code in pocket. You may correct me on that. I'm not sure about that, but you know, still a lot of utility in pocket here. You know, we see the Ella placing down these Christmas mines. That's good, but we still have 4 of these Womai discs in pocket. I'm interested to see how we place them. You know, the increased activation time going to or like reduced activation time going to half a second, you know, means you can kind of carry projectile with these Womai discs. You know, you see a nade being thrown out in, you know, maybe a free place disc does catch that, you can throw the other disc right away, and that disables, for example, a Twitch from finding those discs out early enough. Because you have them in pocket, you can just throw them out when you need them. But that's an inherently very, very risky strategy. And should Maratz be picked off on there, I think that'd be a very, very big blow to the side of Kokosi.
For sure, as we go into those last 15 seconds of the round here. Now the utility is going to come through, but all of those were my gadgets that were saved during the round are going to be also important now. Bumsy going for the late flank here. Maratz gets one, and YMK gets the pick onto the other. Maratz as the flank goes through, but the mirror of Maratz manages to pick off one. Bumsy goes for the trade here. He gets traded back by Already as well, and the plan has to go down with Pozo. Already's all alone here. His teammate is down. He's going to have to push forward here to manage to get the defuse, but Bumsy with another kill manages to secure the overtime for good intentions, and it's 2 5-1 splits for the attacking sides, and we get to see at least another 2 wonderful rounds of Consulate.
Yeah, you know, this console game has been weird. Let's just put it frankly. You know, we've seen a very, very attacker-sided Consulate, which is abnormal to say the least. We've seen a lot of defenders, you know, doing frankly questionable things, in my opinion here. In my humble, non-professional opinion, you know, dying with that utility in pocket. You know, it is. You know, you bring that operator for a reason, right? There is an idea of why you bring that Womai, why you bring those Fenrirs, why you bring, you know, that Ella. And, you know, if you're not placing down the utility, that is waste of a gadget. You might as well play Striker at that point.
I do understand it in some sense. I do understand it in some sense, just because having the flexibility when, you know, good intentions are going for a bit of a vertical take, they're not committing to the front or the backside take necessarily, so they want to try and stay as flexible as they can with their utility to use it late on, so that they don't place it on one side and it becomes completely useless. But at the same time, exactly what you said is completely true, because if you don't place it at the right time then, and you end up dying with it in pocket, it does end up being useless, and at that point it would have been better if you just thrown it in somewhere. And so it's a bit of a balancing act here, and at the moment neither of the teams are really getting it right. So I think your analysis really is spot on, that maybe there is benefit to these teams just being a little bit more kind of proactive with their utility, and maybe even forcing the defenders into one side, or the attackers into one side rather than the other, rather than waiting for them to do it. And that's something that I've been missing from both defensive sides, is kind of stamping their authority onto the round and kind of taking the lead and saying, hey, you guys have it all to do on the attack. This is more difficult for you than it is for us. And kind of just taking control of the round, and that's something that I'm not seeing from either of these two sides at the moment.
Yeah, you know, we've seen a very, you know, we've got one-side attack. We've seen a lot of admin here and not a lot of yellow. You know, that one round, granted, it was a bathroom and a reception side push. But, you know, we've gone a lot over to the admin side, and, you know, dumping that utility over there, you know, you have a very good read on at this point. You know, these teams have played each other many times, I imagine, and you have some sort of idea of what these guys will be doing on the side of the attack. And, you know, if you've seen, you know, let's say 3 attack rounds onto the side of the admin, you know, you have a very good read on the fact that, you know, they may go there again. And, you know, as we see here, you know, the Nari being brought out, the Mira being brought out, the Goyo being brought out, you know, this utility being placed down a lot earlier. And I like, as I say that, I noticed that Devils has a mirror window in his pocket, but you know, that utility being placed down here, it's a lot better than, you know, just dying with it there. As we see Garen go for a tried and true play with the Zofia, you know, being able to throw those impacts out a lot clearer now that she has 3 of them in pocket. And, you know, those deals 60 damage per impact. That will kill a defender should 2 or even 3 hit them on the feet.
Absolutely. Even if you're a 3 armor, if 3 of those Sophia charges hit, you will be losing your life, and there's not really much you can do about it. And that brings you back to that vertical nade meta that we had a few years ago that was so terrifying for defenders to stand on any kind of soft floor, because with just a single ping or a single good sound cue, you would just lose your life, and there's nothing you could do about it. But alas, here the pick doesn't come through, and what I am very happy to see is that there's no Wamai on the side of Kokosi, because otherwise that Soda Shield would have become very difficult with all of the Sophia Util being used here. As they start walking towards the top spiral, and Pozo managed to get the first pick on the Devils. Wante gets downed by a Thorn Gadget here. With 40 seconds left to go, they will be working towards establishing that meeting control, but already in another aggressive position here to try and fight for that long desk.
Yeah, you know, the Blackbeard down but not out is still very much revivable here. You know, we'll have to see if Good Intentions actually push for that revive, which it seems that they are going for. You know, having that shield operator back in the fight is a very important thing, and it allows them to spearhead even though YK is on low health here.
It's 15 seconds to go. It's going to come down to the very last moments again as Boomsy managed to get another pick onto Hella here. Already has to get aggressive and try and get for a refrag here as he gets caught out by a swing on the doorway. Pozo with yet another kill, and the plant isn't going down quite yet as Marit's managed to get one back. Now 3 seconds left to go. The plant has to go down the C4. Will try and fly, but it gets caught in the middle of the air. Marit gets one onto Pozo. The plant has been put down here now, and the Warden has to fight out of this box position here with Marit's going for the flank of Visa Stairs. If they don't have the info, which they do, it could have gone very difficult, and now Marit has to get this 3-piece here. First shot's coming out, and the shield of the Blackbeard just making it a little bit more difficult here as he has to try and cut the fight, try and isolate the 1v1s. The long angles here through the mirror window going to make it so difficult. The Visa Stairs player as well needs to go for the shots. Gets one onto the Blackbeard with a beautiful shot here. Now they have to play passively and try and hold this diffuser. He's only got 1 HP. The counter diffuse coming through. He's all the way halfway through. The Garen pushes in and manages to seal a round of another attacking win. You'd think maybe by the time that the overtime comes around, they're trying to figure out how to defend these sites, but it looks as though the attack will remain supreme.
Yeah, you know, I gotta admit, I have no idea what is going on this game in console. This is the most attacker-sided console I have ever seen in any, you know, competitive setting ever, I think. You know, this is as Hella points out, the scoreline right now being, you know, something I will not mention on broadcast.
Yeah, you better not.
Yeah, I already got told off on that by Mighty. but you know, it is strange seeing these attacks be like I have to give it to these teams, like they do know how to attack the map. Like these attacks have been very good, very well planned out, and they're winning the fights in the right places. You know, we've talked about the utility placement being in pocket. You know, there with Devils kind of cooling off in the latter half of this game. You know, dying with a mirror window in his pocket, which is, you know, it's certainly a choice he can make. You know, I think it would have been, you know, find better place somewhere else, but you know, maybe the strategy only required for that 1 mirror window. I obviously am not privy to these exact strategies, but it's been a strange game to say the least.
You already mentioned in that one defense round that Good Intentions did manage to win up on this very site, that they kind of leaned in a little bit more into wasting the time of Kokosi as they tried to go for that admin across side take. And as you can see, not only Pozo is going for broke, as the entire lineup is designed purely to waste time. They're kind of giving up control of the admin side. They're accepting that that will be taken relatively quickly, as every time they've tried to fight for it, it was fruitless. They didn't manage to get any control out of it, especially with that sense being there to kind of take control of their long desk as well. That was countered by the clash. That's coming again. They're seeing now, again, the Goyo being brought, even more time deny, the smoke, plant deny, the Wamai, even more utility deny up on that soda machine position. And they've also brought the Echo now, Goyo, set in play, so him dying isn't bad on the utility side, but it definitely doesn't help for the man count.
Green man going down early here, you know, not the end of the world, but I wanna you know, pay attention to the Devils here, you know. I'm playing that Deimos a lot on the attack side of Kokosi, you know. We have 0 defenders right now on the first floor. There is nothing contesting that Deimos, for example, for going for the Echo, going for the clash tracks here. You know, that Echo hasn't been played in this game thus far. And, you know, we have no Twitch, we have no IQ to actually counter those drones. So, you know, the only way you have of countering that is no Thatcher as well, actually. So the only way I can see of countering that is that you make the Deimos hunt for it. You know. And if that Deimos should get the pick onto Garen there on the Echo, it would be a massive advantage for the side of Kokosi. But, you know, we shall see how this goes. Now, Devils is walking up these Visa stairs or spiral stairs, which would tell me that he's not going for that vertical play, and the echo will remain largely uncontested.
Does manage to get the pick onto the Wamai though, so even though the Echo gets to play for a little bit longer, the Wamai doesn't hear as the first nade comes through, but Kuzik does have the space to maneuver around here as Marat gets some shots here, as already is also downed, and the aggressive positioning coming through here from Pozo, thinking about if he wants to go for the swing around, switches to the SMG-11, indicating that he does expect there to be a little bit of a long gunfight as we see Marat's all the way back now trying to hold that angle. Kuzik placing that shield now that both of the nades have been used on the side of Devils. The impact's coming through here as well from Hella, dealing a good amount of damage. But alas, he does have the time to place down a shield in the 3v5 situation. Tries to go for a swing around, but gets caught out by Marat. And it looks like another attacking round will come through with Pozo denying the smoke canisters with the wallbang. And now it's the two plant deny operators needing to do everything except for deny the plant. First pick coming through from Garen as the aggressive pick comes through from Devils, and a second pick from him as well.
Yeah, it's not over until it's over. Now we have the plans down, going for the copy down of Mirage, already finding Garen here, those Echo drones now going largely offline, still providing info, but nothing more, and, the Mirage doing everything there, planting it, the diffuser and getting the final kill. And we are going all the way, 15 rounds of consulate attack.
And the weird thing is the scoreline isn't even all too surprising. You see 7-7s on the map all the time just because of how strong the defense typically is. So the way that we've ended up here is really the story. The scoreline itself is probably not all too unexpected. It's not that crazy to see a 7-7 on Consulate. Two teams, top of T2, a lot of players with experience also around that kind of T1 realm. It's not too surprising, especially on a map like this, but to have seen 12 out of 14 rounds being won by the attack, that's not something that you see on the most attacker-sided of maps on good days, let alone Consulate of all things. As we get yet another round on the top floor, I've honestly lost count at this point, but it seems like Kokosi are confident that they figured out exactly what they need to do to make sure that this time it does work.
Yeah, I'm still a bit perplexed of the fact that we haven't seen those tertiary sides at all. Piano not being maybe the greatest, but by no means a bad side on Consulate. It is still a very, very defendable site, and the split side being kind of a meme somewhat, but we have seen that being brought out in tier 1 play with success. It's a bit of a different side experience. You have that one bomb site being on the top floor and one being below in servers, but it's still a very defendable site. Like, you can do it. There have been successes on that side. It is no means as horrible as something like Kitchen on Labs or that or that bar I mentioned on Clubhouse earlier. And
You say that, but I've seen an alarming amount of Kitchen be played, especially in T2 tournaments recently on Labs, and every time, even when we play against it, every time I just think, what on earth are they thinking here? So I don't think I've seen it being won once at least yet, so you are right, the site isn't that good, but teams will play anything these days, it seems.
Yeah, like, the meta is always evolving here, and we've seen these big swings in balance being brought out, with the additions of the new Dokkaebi rework and the Snake. We've seen the meta focus a little bit more over to the attack side. That intel gathering is very, very important, and the shield's still playing a large part in these attack rounds. But and not to this degree. I don't think I've ever seen this attack side map, even on something like a border or a bank. That traditionally swings a little bit over to the attack side.
Exactly. So I am very interested to see if we'll see kind of the pre-expected result here of the defense taking the last round on the overtime, or if we're going to be seeing what we've been expecting from this game, the attack coming through. So we see half of the round being gone and the control of that kind of copy side being fully taken now. So they're going to be working forward now. Garen trying to go for the same play as he did last time, but the info coming through, there's no one playing all too close at the moment. So he's going to be waiting a little bit longer here with his launcher, as the Tachanka is going to become the kind of most important operator to take care of later on as the round. Every second that ticks away is a second that Tachanka becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. We're still working to get the front desk control here. With two players up on that spiral skylight, and all of these were my gaps. It's still kind of being in the way as we see all of the utility be caught one after the next. The nade coming through finally now, and the shield being cleared off of long desk, but they do only have a minute left to go. And as we see Bunzi here on the skylight with the diffuser in hand as well, he's going to have to try and figure out a way to rotate around and make sure that he can get a plant down. But the Tachanka is going to be that operator that's going to try and deny that all the way back from the admin window.
Yeah, you know, yeah, we've seen that the popularity of Tachanka rise in the recent months, you know, or even years, you know. After that rework, when he got, you know, the Trumi collection, he was quite weak as an operator, but now, you know, that is a minute and a half, if I'm not wrong, of pure plant denial. As Pozo finds the head of Hela here, you know, we're in a 4v3 for the side of the attack here, and do not tell me it's another attack-sided round, please don't.
It's a man advantage for good intentions. Here's already trying to hold the flank back. Devil's here in the kind of front office, but Geddes and Paul it, but Pozo managed to pick him off and already had to swing around to get the refrag. Now he does get two, but Pozo managed to bring him back as well, and it's another attack round win. We've seen 15 rounds of Consulate, 13 of which were won not by the defense, but by the attack, as good intentions managed to take the Corsi's map all the way after 15 rounds, as I already said. Ika, talk to me. What a game.
What a game. That is everything I did not expect to see today. You know, you think of Consulate, you think of defense dominance, you think of defense aggression, you think of those hard to get areas, you know, attackers spending a lot of time getting control of the map. But no, we just go for the side, we just get the kills. Like that is the most anomalous Consulate I have ever seen in my life. I don't think I've ever seen anything even like that.
I think, would you say that this is I'm lost for words after what we just saw, honestly. Like, it's so difficult for me to even kind of begin to think about what just happened. Would you say that the reason it was so attacker-sided is because both teams attacked the map so well? Or do you think it's more because they both defended it so poorly? Or maybe it's a mixture of the two?
I think it's a mixture of the two. You know, you have to give it to these teams. Like they clearly do know what they're doing on the attack. You know, they're playing it very, very well. Otherwise, they wouldn't get these rounds. You know, it is, you know, after what we've seen, you wouldn't think it's a defense-sided map, but at the end of the day, it is. It is still a defense-sided map. So, you know, maybe the utility placement on defense not being quite as good as it could have been. Maybe those crosses and those trades not being quite optimal. You know, we saw a lot of opening picks that were on these solo roams, the very deep solo roams that were not traded back inside of defense. But, you know, like, it's just like, I'm still trying to process all of that.
Yeah. I think you mentioned it. The map is usually 60% defender-sided. Maybe after we've seen 13 how many was it? 13 rounds go to the attackers this game. Maybe we'll see those statistics sway considerably enough to make an actual dent in the statistics. I wouldn't be all too surprised, to be completely honest. But one thing I can 100% guarantee is that we will be back after a short break with map 2.
Ja, auf der Seite von Just Triggers muss man ganz ehrlich sagen. Die wollen hier scheinbar alles über die Vertikale regeln.
Die wollen das hier über die Vertikale regeln und sofern man hier ein bisschen versucht linear zu spielen, holt sich Kili hier, sag ich mal, die erste Visual, der wird auch gedownt und gecleared von Gisela. Striker holt sich direkt den nächsten auf Jack und somit haben wir den großen Salat. Es geht auch in Runde 6 so weiter, wie es angefangen hat. Ryzen drückt hier dieses Spielsystem durch, die ganze Hälfte. Und was mir, sag ich mal, noch mehr Angst macht, haben wir gerade hinten aus der Regie nochmal erzählt bekommen, das hier ist nicht der Map-Pick von Ryzen, das ist der Map-Pick von Just Chill Guys. Und auf seiner eigenen Map nach der ersten Hälfte potenziell mit 0:6 hinzuliegen, das tut mehr als nur weh.
Du hattest im Vorfeld gesagt, dass wir Consulate noch gar nicht gesehen haben von Ryzen, ne?
Ja. Und ich glaube, man sieht warum.
Naja. Also,
es hilft dann noch den Toxic Babe, der so ein bisschen Zeit rauszuholen, aber geht nicht auf den Diffuser, er muss jetzt ran. Striker ist drin, hat ihn reingebaitet. Jetzt muss man hier gucken, ob Jack den Kill ziehen kann. Jack holt sich den Kill und hat genug Zeit, in aller Seelenruhe diesen Diffuse zu tätigen. Somit stellt man hier seitens Chillguys auf 3:6. Die Hälfte hat man geschafft. Die zweite Hälfte kommt erst noch.
Junge, ey, die sind wirklich nicht tot zu kriegen. Das ist unfassbar. Also also Just Trigger ist hier wirklich, halten sich mit der letzten Kraft in noch ein Game. 3 Runden
hängen und kann nicht gleichzeitig irgendwie eine Waffe haben. Wer eine Waffe in der Hand haben kann, ist Two-Face. Eben, mit dem Tachanka. Ja. Und er holt sich dann hier auch die ersten Frags raus. Mit dem ACOG an der Garage. Und ich frage mich, will Regaming einfach nur ganz schnell in die Defense?
Nein! Two-Face, Quad-Kill hier! Er geht hier einfach straight gegen den Glass und am Ende
bleibt es beim Quad-Kill, wenn wir irgendwie hier was finden, um sich mal reinzuspielen. Aber das gleiche System ist wie auch letztens. Jetzt holt sich Striker die Vertikale, die man seitens Daily gar nicht im Blick hat. Fano wird geholt von Max und Nero holt sich die letzten Flawless zum Ende. 7-3 der Standing, somit holt man sich den zweiten Map-Punkt und geht somit, sage ich mal, für die nächste Map auf Series Point.
Bei Phanix weiß man eigentlich, wo der sein müsste, aber man hat nicht damit gerechnet, wo hier Snooze unterwegs ist. Guess who's back bekommt aber beide. Wie ist der, bitteschön, da gerade nach dem Drop? Hier 4 auf beiden Seiten, alles noch drinne. Letztendlich wird es wahrscheinlich dann einen Push geben. Man wird versuchen, in der Lautstärke, wie man fast sagen, schon, da dann Submission irgendwie. Jetzt Penelope hier gegen Phanix. Snooze holt sich Guess who's back. Und dann sind da die Attacker, die einfach mal reinpushen und die Gunst der Stunde nutzen, um hier irgendwie noch diese Runde für sich zu entscheiden. Und wenn es eben nicht mit der
Und das ist halt die Frage, hat man es auf dem Schirm? Ich glaube, Max hat sich schon mal umgedreht. Er ist der Meinung, der hat da irgendwas gehört oder könnte eventuell was wirklich anbahnen, aber die anderen Jungs, also Gisela und so, die haben gar nichts. Stehen da vor ihm rum und er holt sich den ersten, kann er sich den zweiten, holt den zweiten Double, Jack auf Double. Und wo ist Max? Wo ist Max hingelaufen? Nero ist auch unten. Die sind ja förmlich aneinander vorbeigelaufen. Und Jack, der bestraft das doppelt. Vorerst.
Ein Drama in 3 Akten, möchte man fast schon sagen. Ne? Also erst
auch ordentlich einstecken, aber X-Zero kommt nochmal aus sich raus und holt sich hier zumindest mal Two-Face und jetzt schießt er hier seinen eigenen Mann ab, weil er die Echo-Drone zerstören wollte.
Ist schon mal zu planten, der Defense gar nicht genug Zeit dafür zu geben. Redmark kommt rauf auf den Planter, der Pre-Fire sitzt nicht, er kommt dann doch zu früh, jetzt muss er nachladen, wird dabei vielleicht gecatcht, nein, er kommt nochmal in die richtige Position. Die geöffnet ist das Mirrorfenster für den besseren Engel auf dem Planter. Er weiß auf jeden Fall, wo er ist, aber er wird von hinten jetzt geholt. Two-Face kann sich dann mit der Piste die Kills sichern und damit auch das 5:4.
Ja, das hätte man besser ausspielen müssen. Vor allem hatte man ja da
Execute gut sind. Und jetzt haben wir noch 15 Sekunden. Leute, ihr müsst auch on Zeit kommen. Head wird jetzt gedroppt, C4 kommt allerdings raus, kann gerade noch rechtzeitig zerschossen werden. Aber man hat den Pro nicht auf dem Schirm, das ist ein 1 gegen 3 und Faith ist einfach ein Service. Eine kleine Maschine.
sein und natürlich wahrscheinlich die Kontrolle über Garage zu bekommen. Bin sehr gespannt, was wir hier dann am Ende sehen.
Oh, schön aufgepasst von Capitao. Man kann da einen injuren, jetzt kommt das Feuer hinterher, der HEE kommt hinterher. Man kriegt aber diesen Kill nicht confirmed. Burst X ist auch raus. Jetzt aber Everest von Shio rausgezogen. Und da ist dann auch ein Nerf gegen Deutsch, kann ich den Frick sichern. Aber auch das wäre wieder fast ein Refrack geworden von Slot. Aber da ist Sushi. Der rappelt immer noch und kann genau diese Kills.
Execute gut sind. Und jetzt haben wir noch 15 Sekunden. Leute, ihr müsst auch on Zeit kommen. Head wird jetzt gedroppt, C4 kommt allerdings raus, kann gerade noch rechtzeitig zerschossen werden. Aber man hat den Pro nicht auf dem Schirm, das ist ein 1 gegen 3 und Faith ist einfach in Service. Eine kleine Maschine zu gehen. Das ist natürlich erstmal ein guter Gedanke, besonders mit dem Puls und runter der Warden. Vergisst ein bisschen zu lange, dass er noch ein Gadget hat, wird deswegen vom Blitz umgeholzt.
Als erstes verloren. Jetzt Sledge ist unfassbar viel Utility, wenn wir gucken, was wir auf der Seite von den Turks haben, mit zum Beispiel einem Castle, ja? Also, es ist einfach diese frühe Aggression generell, ob sie das jetzt über die Clash oder die Spawn Peaks irgendwie machen, ist einfach wirklich gut zu sehen, dass die Turks die Vorteile dieser Map zusätzlich nutzen, um es denen hier so unentspannt wie möglich zu machen. Und diesmal geht sogar der Bandit Trick hier durch.
Ja, Bennett geht durch, der geht durch. Man hat die Vertikale, sag ich jetzt mal, daher versucht die Vertikale auch zu halten. Kriegt da, damit sind sie denn mehr als zufrieden. Oh, aber Tom hat ein ganz Gespräch was dagegen. Und jetzt erstmal Koray. Ein ganz schnelles Ende.
Ja, da. Tubarao, Kaid-Kombo. Wir haben den Tubarao gesehen. Schöner Runout-Versuch von Pangoro und der zweite Peak erfolgreich. Auf Shens.
Sich über die Vertikale im ersten Stock aufzubauen, um auch da nicht wirklich zu riskieren, dass man hier einen Shot von dem C4 auf die Vertikale hintergeworfen bekommt. Jetzt
also,
Chase in die Shenzo.
Ich würde sagen, ich bin auf dieser Distanz von dieser Shotgun.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with map number 2 of Good Intentions versus Kokosi. I am still Maxwell and I am still here with Herka. Talk to me about map 1 because I'm still not quite sure what I just watched.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about that map. You know, it didn't seem like a consulate. It looked more like a bank to me with the amount of attacker rounds being held there. It was, frankly, like I am at a loss for it. It was ridiculous. It was unprecedented. You know, we only saw 2 sites on that entire map. You know, we only played top floor. We only played bottom floor. We didn't saw those tertiary or the 4th site. You know, I don't know the fancy word for that, but we'll have that. But you know, it was weird. It was an odd map and one for the history books, I think.
Absolutely. For our second map, we will be going to Lair. I just have to check my notes really quickly, even though I've got it on my screen in front of me. For the second map, we will be heading to Lair, which is also typically a site or a map where you would expect the defense to be doing a little bit better. But after what we have just watched transpire with 13 out of 15 rounds being won by the attack on a map like Consulate, I'm not quite sure what I can expect anymore. Do you have any more kind of insight or ideas for what might come to pass here in the next few rounds?
You know, I think I'm on the same page with you. I think we can throw all expectations outside the window right now. Like there is no telling what we're going to see on Lair. You know, Lair traditionally a little bit less defender sided than you know, likes of Concept. We have Concept sitting around 60%, Lair at the mid 50s, 54, 55, somewhere around there. So you know, the attack technically has a better shot there, but you know, after what we've seen, I don't know what to believe. I don't know if I'm real. You know, we might see another repeat of Concept with the attack just going ham on that map. Like,
absolutely. So I'm very intrigued personally to see if I think they already mentioned in the lobby chat, let's try and win some defenses this map maybe, because I think they've also realized that this isn't something that you would expect so much usually. When it comes to the map itself and the way that it's played, you already mentioned in the last map that there's been a little bit of a shift to kind of these info operators, to these operators like, for example, a Deimos, a kind of Dokkaebi, those kinds of operators, a Solid Snake since he's been added. Is that something that you're expecting to see here as well, or something that you think is likely going to be banned out, or how do you kind of see the map playing itself out?
You know, that is a very good question, actually. It very much depends on how the teams want to play. You know, we see Lair as a map that is quite dependent on the breaches. You know, there's a lot of walls, a lot of breaches, you know, a lot of stuff to be opened up. But at the same time, something like a snake, you know, that, let's take top floor, for example. You know, Lair is quite a big map, but like those sites themselves are quite small, quite constrained, and you can see a lot with that snake scanner. You can get a lot done with that verticality from the Deimos. So, you know, I think we'll just have to wait and see what you know, the bans bring, what the operator picks bring, because you know, I'm hoping we'll see a wide variety of different things.
Absolutely. So after an incredibly thrilling Consulate, which ended up going to the side of Good Intentions, we will be seeing them back on their very own map pick now of Lair as we go into the second map of this best of 3 on day 2 of Meisterschaft EU. We'll be seeing the bands coming in here for the first round rollage. We'll be seeing Kokosi starting on the defense this time and Good Intentions on the attack, where they have just ended the map of Consulate as well. So they'll be kind of continuing with what they had just started. And if you want to start something new, perhaps you can get some tickets for the Combine offline finals, which are happening on July 25th. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, check if they're still available. Meet us in Düsseldorf. You'll be seeing some of the wonderful people that are working behind the scenes on this cast. Unfortunately, I won't be there myself. I don't know if you're planning to go, but I can confirm for sure that it is always a fantastic time. Make sure you get your tickets.
Yeah, make sure to get your tickets. You know, I won't be there in person, but I guarantee you I will be watching those games and watching them with interest. You know, going into the map here, you know, we have the bans out and we have quite a classic set of bans for the side of defense. We have the Bandit being, you know, taken out along with the Mira. That will help keep those walls open for the side of Good Intentions, you know, removing those blockades, you know, to keep those walls open for the side of the attack. You know, the Thermites will not be able to be impacted through the mirror windows. We can't see any tuber out mirror checking, and you know, we do have the kite open not being brought out here in the first round, but you know, it could be an option they could consider in the basement defenses. And then on the attack we have the Ying and the Grim being brought out, you know, 2 very powerful operators, you know, 2 very execute focused operators. So Kokosi is trying to hamper that execute potential that the attack will have.
Okay, I think you mentioned already those breaches being so incredibly pivotal when it comes to a map like Lair. And obviously Mira is a strong operator when it comes to kind of the positional denial that she can offer, but also being played very frequently on the breaches as kind of a pseudo breach denial operator if a bandit and a Kate are banned, for example. What is interesting here is that although the Kate is open, the side of Kokosi have elected not to bring it, and so Pozo is going to have a far easier time when it comes to opening the breaches. And while some people may think that Bumsy has become essentially useless when it comes to his utility, at least on the Thatcher, there is still one or two nice things that you can do with a Thatcher, although in this very round it'll kind of end up being one of two things, and that's either denying the smoke grenades or turning off those wonderful sunglasses, as Pozo is another entry pick, but is immediately refragged by Devils while that breach is being opened.
Yeah, you know, important utility being taken offline for both the attack and both the defense. You know, I think that was a line of sight being created on the breach. I do not think that was a walkable or a crouchable breach yet. You know, that A still having a lot of utility in pocket, and the AK-12, a very, very powerful gun in the right hands. And then the Azami dying on the side of the defense, you know, those Kiva barriers are very pivotal for holding that mask room, holding that table position, you know, stalling the defense, forcing them to clear that position out for maybe a verticality or some such of that. We do not have alternative breaches at all here. You know, we have the double shell push coming through, but like those breaches will stay close now. That benefits the defense a lot.
Yeah, having double shields is obviously very good because you can put on a lot of pressure, but something that you won't be seeing any pressure from is those breaches, like we already said. And so now Tachanka can sit behind the shield and kind of be a little bit more peaceful as he sprays his fire into the hallway, but Garen manages to pick off Devils here, who's peeking down the verticals to try and see if he can spot anyone. So now it's going to just be that denial here to try and clear out the position of the Monty, who just walks through here and makes sure that he can get some control in as Maris manages to pick off the kill onto the YMK here, already getting one on the Kusik and Bumsy getting one onto Maris. But both of the shields down now, and a 2v2 situation to finish off the round here. Tachanka is still working with those fires. We've got two very spicy, very hot operators here left on the side of the Kokosi to fight against good intentions.
Yeah, you know, time is getting kind of low right now. We are under a minute, you know, 48 seconds left in the round, and we still have 9 Shuriken launchers in pocket. I'm not aware of how many of those Goyo canisters have been popped, but I'm assuming there still are some alive around. You know, I think Good Intentions needs to get a move on as Mirage picks off ahead of Bumsy. And Garen has it all to 2 in this game with 30 seconds left on the clock, and he just can't close it out.
Already managing to close out the first round here on the defense side for Kokosi, making them equal their defense record on Consulate after 15 rounds, after just 1 on the map of Lair. And so they'll be looking to make progress and doubling their map count on the defense side at least. That's a promising sign for them at least, and maybe a promising sign of things to come for this map as a whole, as I'm sure we will be seeing some more defense rounds being won this time around. Although after what we saw last time, I'm not quite sure that I'm willing to put any money on that bet. We're seeing them move down into the basement now for their second defense.
You know, maybe we'll be returning to normalcy, returning to sanity after the first map, and seeing some defenses being won on a defense-sided map. You know, going back to the basement, we're seeing the Goyo, we're seeing the smoke still be brought out. You know, we're seeing the Warden with the C4. You know, this is a very time stall heavy strategy, very
Attackers have located a bomb.
very planned denial heavy strategy. And I am very, very interested. You know, we talked about those information operators here, and Kokosi have elected to ban out the Ying and the Grim, which, you know, are partly execute operators, are partly, you know, intel operators, you know, both very powerful still. But that means that Okabe is still alive, the Snake is still alive, and those operators and those gadgets have to find value here, you know, against Kokosi, justify their bringing, you know. I'm very, very interested in seeing how they utilize that.
Attacker's objective is to defuse a bomb.
Absolutely, I do think it is positive here what both teams are bringing on the sides of the attack and the defense. We're not seeing anything that's too out of the ordinary so far, at least. Seeing this extension here into Armory as well, coming in from Kokosi, something that is often played these days. Seeing CSK or Kusik here making very quick work of the Goyo canisters, with 2 of them already being cleared, 3 of them within the first 25 seconds of the round, making really good time, and essentially meaning that Hella is now just a glorified TCSG. He's just going to be working as a sentry gun with all of his utility pretty much being cleared very early on in the round.
You know, you say glorified TCSG, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. That gun is a workhorse with that ACOG on the defense. You know, it is a very, very scary thing to go up against. You are playing essentially on even ground with the attack. And, you know, you can pick those gunfights, you can pick those, you know, nasty little pixel angles, and you can win them due to the magnified optic that is, you know, on that gun. And I think Hella will make himself a problem here in those lockers, and we'll see how Kusik will deal with it. You know, F2 versus the TCSG here, with him being flanked by, I believe, Garen on the ace.
Garen here taking this position in the missile hallway, but Hela does decide to fall back here, doesn't want to take that 1v1 gunfight, as at the end of the day, that does make it a little bit more risky. If you're just holding positions to take one-on-one gunfights, then 50% of the time you win, 50% of the time you lose, and who does lose this time is Maritz here, as Kusik manages to get the first pick onto this connector here. Sees the head of Hela, who swings around for the refrag as well. That TZSG doing massive work here with already getting the pick on Garen as well, who's working in that missile hallway. So now it's a man advantage situation for Kokosi. They have 1 minute 15 left on the clock as YMK picks off Devils. That is the Azami gone once again. No more Keybers to be placed down here. They have to be aware of the hatch here as they don't know the full positions of the plays of Good Intentions. As Pozo's going to make his way here into that missile hallway, into that main lobby, as Hela picks up another kill with the double now onto YMK. But Pozo with a refrag above, and it's another 2v2 situation just like last round. We've got different actors, different operators, but the same man count situation. It's 50 seconds here now. As Bumsy waits for Pozo to get into position. He's going to try and find a good little spot to get here. He's going to play some verticality with his Flores drones, taking these last 40 seconds to try and kind of put some more pressure onto the defenders of Kokosi as they try and organize themselves here around the diffuser.
Yeah, you know, we're kind of running low on time here, 30 seconds. We still have those impact in pocket. We still have that C4 in pocket with, you know, the favorite guns of the rank stars, you know, the TCSG and the SMG-12, you know. It's going to sink for the defense here. SMG versus SMG-12. Violence here with the TCSG of Hela going down. You know, Marat has it all to do, finding in a couple picks here. And just can't close it out. You know, as I said, SMG on SMG violence and the SMG of Good Intentions just being better there on the day.
I mean, like you said, we can't really expect anything anymore, and we've been seeing them kind of devolve into these rank plays at times, as some people would call it in that first map as well. And just like you said, kind of the rank star weapons here, kind of closing out the round here. Good Intentions managing to get their first attacking round as well on this map. And if the past 17 rounds, I had to do some maths there really quickly, that was not my strong suit at this time of day. In the last 17 rounds, it's that Good Intentions definitely know how to play their attacks. Kokosi maybe struggle a little bit on the defender side. We will finally be seeing a third site for a map, so at least we're breaking the mold in one way or another.
Yep. You know, I don't know about you, but I personally do prefer this this Bunk's tertiary site to the basement. I think the basement is kind of falling off in win rate recently. You know, it's kind of hard to defend. You have those lateral takes being done, but at the same time you're kind of forced into a roam game on the top floor. You know, if you allow those attackers to open verticality on you, the site will get kind of hard to play very quickly, and it gets uncomfortable. And you know, there are a lot of options here on the bunk side. You know, often we see teams going upstairs holding you know, that R6 room with verticality onto the breach. You know, we can see, you know, lateral roams. We often see that extension in the green. You know, there's a lot of options on how to play this site, and it has a very good win rate, if I'm not wrong, in a professional play.
For sure, especially when you kind of go for the faster plants there and don't clear the top floor all too much. It becomes a little bit difficult for the attack to get that diffuser down, especially when you see operators like the Solus, like the Warden being bought, making it a little bit more difficult. It's definitely not any easier when your hard breacher dies early on here. Marit's getting the pick onto Kusik, who was the thermite for that round. It looks like the breach is already open, so maybe that isn't the end of the world here, with a bit of an interesting setup with that shield being played now that Wamai's been buffed. The side of Kokosi thinking, hey, we can really make good use of that buff here, as the rest of Good Intentions looks to work on the top floor. Swings coming around here with some pre-fires based off of that intel on the Fenrir. But alas, no shots connecting here, as Pozo goes for another wallbang into that aggressive position here, trying to clear out. I think it's Maritz with the aggressive position. No, it's not. It's already here. We've got really aggressive pre-fires through that impact hole, and it stays on this aggressive position as well.
Yeah, you know, we're seeing the blitz be brought out here on the side of Good Intentions. They're perhaps realizing that, as I said, that the blitz does go down already, finding 2 picks and Bozo. Garen does trade it back onto Marats on the Fenrir, but you know, I think Good Intentions have realized that, you know, we have to clear out this top floor. You know, that hole is very strong, and you have the Warden, you have the Solus, and you just cannot get that plant down if you have that top floor presence still be very active. They go for that clear and they lose men here, and Garen going down very low. It's a 2v3 for Good Intentions, and it's not looking all that great, especially with the shotgun of Hela close on that door.
He's going to have to try and make something work here. He doesn't have any flashbangs left, and even if he did, Warden can counter them very well, and what else he can counter is Bumsy himself as he swings around with a shotgun. And Maritz gets the swing out onto Garen as well, and so they close out the second defense round here for them, and that means we have equaled the entire defense volume, I guess, for
oh my God.
the last map. And I think we can leave it at that there, because I think I mean, we're not going to be seeing what we saw on the last map again. So at least from that side, we're seeing something new here. We're seeing some defenses being won as well. I think both teams will be happy that things have returned to normality a little bit, that things have become a little bit more predictable. But at the same time, I'm sure Good Intentions would love to win these attacks and keep on going with where they left up on the first map.
Yeah, often on a map like there, you're expecting that 4-2 scoreline to go for the defense, even if 5-1 isn't that uncommon. We see the next set of bans go out, and we have the snake and the kite being taken out. Kokosi elected not to play the kite here on any of their rounds, I do believe. But Good Intentions still taking that wall denial off, and those breaches will be absolutely free from now on. You maybe use you can use the mute there, but it doesn't quite counter these breach operators as they used to, especially with the ace being available. And then on the side of the attack, we talked about this information operator before the map, and that snake being taken out is a very critical thing. That gadget does get a lot of intel, and you can often use it from even outside the map. Figure out defender positions, gather intel for your team, and smoke these positions out. And it forces people to move as well. It is a threat. It is a massive threat. If you are found out by that scanner and you do not move, you are marked for death at that point. So, it is very reasonable to take that out of the hands of Good Intentions.
I absolutely agree with your analysis there on the solid snake, and especially on aggressive teams like Good Intentions can be. It becomes so much more potent even because you can just put someone on that solid snake, make him take his scanner in the hand, and kind of just run across the map until that scanner turns red because he knows that he's safe. He knows that he can just kind of take that control. Of course, there's a small chance that someone is lurking in a corner in a mute jammer, or maybe there's a vigil hiding on a scanner or something like this. But this is an unlikely situation and a gamble that most teams will be happy to take when it comes to taking map control early, as we see Pozo going for the slightly safer option this round when it comes to opening up that breach, as he does it from the roof. We've seen nades coming in here to clear the Goyo on that missile stair position as well, with Whimsy also playing it a little bit safer here. So Good Intentions kind of realizing that they need that man count as they go later on into the round, especially when they have deny operators like the Goyo, like the Tachanka, like the Smoke Up, also like the Azami in some sense, who does get more strong as the round goes on. They will need their players. Losing anyone early is going to be incredibly difficult for them to come back from.
Yep. We've touched upon the plan denial of the defense here, but looking over the attack, I like it what they're bringing here. This is a bit nonsense, you don't see the Pinka all that often in professional play or semi-professional play as this is. But that double shield strategy has been gaining momentum recently. That Monty is the living drone, is the info gatherer, the human tank. We've seen Montaigne's tank C4s tank those smoke grenades. It is a very survivable operator and gathers you very easy intel. And then on the other side, you have that Blackbeard, that offers a little bit more aggression. And then the Pinka to tie that package together, allow the Blackbeard to ADS faster, give even more health to these already healthy operators, and push that aggressive advance here from shields.
He already said that Finker is an operator that we don't see that much, and especially because of that, the spear did get buffed recently, so maybe that's something that kind of plays into it, but especially that ADS speed buff is something that's so strong when you have two shield operators on your side. But one interaction that they do have to watch out for as well is that you will take more damage from those smoke ticks if you are currently being boosted by the Nanostorm. So especially on such a deny heavy strat, it is something to bear in mind here. He's already managed to pick off one, but Pozo manages to get him on the rotate back to the site, and so now it's pressure here from the green hallway side as Hella manages to take out the first shield here on the Blackbeard. Not what you want to see here as you try and work your way towards the site. Kuzik also taking a little bit of damage. Pozo with a good sound here onto the position of Maratz here, who's playing aggressively. The Tachanka needs to be aware of this backstab so that he can play his fires later on. Pressured out from the back by Pozo. So here on the main side, Kuzik still being pinched out. Still playing aggressively in servers on that prone angle with the shotgun together with his smoke and the fire being dropped. So kind of sits there and looks for a little bit and he thinks, I can't get through here. I just need to wait. I just need to see if I can do anything here. But with 20 seconds left to go, there isn't really much time. This fire comes out here as well. Maris with the swing on the Garen. And it looks like they're being completely locked out here. The knife comes in. Marat with a knife right back. And Pozo gets one before it gets traded up by Devils. And it's a clean defense. But Good Intention just kind of ended up walking into the wall of fire and not finding a way through.
Yeah, oftentimes you will see people ban out, like, smoke is a very underrated ban. You will often see that be banned out, for example, on border, on the defense, but it is a very good operator on a lot of maps, that smoke gas stalling for time. And another one that has been getting, momentum is that Tachanka ban. We've talked at length about Tachanka here, and especially in concert, that plant denial is
Attackers
is a
need to
lot.
locate
You know,
and
you
defuse
bring
bomb.
a minute and a half of fire that the defender just cannot cross, especially shields, because that shield will get blown away from you if you step into the fire. It is like a melee effect for that shield at that point, and it is very, very, very risky for those shields to cross that fire in any capacity, along with, you know, the shield that the Chonka brings and the LMG that is invaluable for doing those side setup. You know, you can make rotates, you can make lines of sight, you can make fourth lines in seconds compared to the amount of shotgun shots you would have to spend on those normally if you do not bring the Chonka. So it's just a wonderful operator altogether, and Kokosi are using it to its fullest extent.
I think both Tachanka and Smoke have had really interesting trajectories throughout Rainbow Six as a competitive
Attackers are
esport as a
moving out
whole.
to locate
You see
a bomb
both
and
operators
defuse
that have been there pretty much since the very, very start, since the inception of the game's life cycle. Tachanka obviously in a slightly different capacity as he is nowadays with that sentry turret, for those of you that can think all the way back to the early days of Lord Chanka being a little bit more of a meme character in those days.
I know.
But these days, he's not even played that much, but on certain maps, he's just so strong that you really almost have to play him, or at least have to respect him for sure.
You know, we see maps like, for example, Larry's a very good example. At Pablo, we'll see that the Tachanka being brought out very, very often. Another one is Bank Basement. You know, that Echo that the Tachanka, you know, will often get banned out, especially recently. And then you will have that evergreen smoke. You know, as I say that, we see Marauds on these filtration stairs. You know, that is a position that a lot of plays have been made from. You know, I'm looking towards teams like, for example, Dark Zero and Kino, you know, on those stairs, playing that smoke. You know, it is a very powerful position, and it is very hard to uproot that smoke from that spot. You know, that wastes a lot of time on it. And you know, Smoke getting that shield back, you know, you can fall back into that shield should you need to do so, as Bumsy finds Devils here. But you know, Smoke's just, it is so good. It is so good, and it has always been so good.
You're mentioning that position. It's one that reminds me a little bit of Service There's on Bank as well. You know, a very pivotal position to be able to take control of what you need to be able to get a plant down. Secret Intentions with a man advantage here on the basement site. Still working on getting a little bit of that utility gone as the first Dokubi call, I believe, comes through from Bumsy here. To get a little bit more information, two of them at the same time, of course, since that Dokubi change came through yesterday. She now, of course, can call operators back to back and only has a cooldown when it comes to calling the same operator twice. That cooldown also being extended from 7 seconds to 14 seconds, I believe. So a slightly different way of using that utility and really just making sure that even more operators can be cleared as Bumsy uses not only his utility, but also his weapon, that all dangerous SMG-12 to get yet another pick onto already. You see the attackers of Good Intentions working in here now, and Marat's still isolated on that service stairs position. He kind of knows service stairs, not even green stairs. Zelamob and Marat's both fight back as I stumble over my words. A second kill here for Zelamob. This TCSG ripping through the side of Good Intentions, and the man count being swapped out completely here. Garen just struggling a little bit here with the shots coming through. Can't get them onto Zelamob. He still stood in this backside position with another pick of the TCSG coming through, but he does get down. And so now it's a 2v2 with the last 30 seconds of the round. Marat's picking off Garen here. Pozo all alone against effectively 2 as he confirms that kill there. He has to get the last 2 picks. 20 seconds left on the clock. Smoke canisters coming through. 1 more left in the pocket. Plant is going to be attempted here as he sets it on. Takes it off the plant as he finds shots on Tamarat, who is sprinting in. Now he has to set the plant. Diffuser's going down. Only 8 seconds left to go. The last Toxic Vape coming through. It's not going to be enough to get Pozo down. He manages to retreat his way all the way back to Locker's low HP now as the shots come through from Marat. Gets the kill in the end. And the retake from that smoke that we mentioned at the beginning of the round, how strong he can be. And he's proved it once again in this round as Kokosi take 4.
Disabled the diffuser.
Yeah, you know, we almost had the attack being around back, but you know, the SMG-11 is the SMG-11. It goes burr, and you know, that really hurts in some cases, a lot of cases actually. But you know, I'm very glad that on one side that we've returned, you know, the status quo on Lair. You know, 4 attacks or 4 defenses. I'm sorry, is a lot. Is expected pretty much on this map. You know, you may find the 5th. That is, you know, that would be very good for you. You know, going into your attack half with a 4-round, you know, a parachute should you need it. But you know, we're most likely looking at a 4-2 half here, you know, as we go back to that tertiary side, depending on how well Good Intentions can actually clear that out. You know, we see the double hard breach being brought out again, so you know, if Garen should die on that thermite again here on the breach, it isn't the biggest problems. I'm very excited to see what YMK can do on that Dokkaebi here, you know. Dokkaebi's changes, you know, happening, and I don't know what you think of that rework yourself, but I kind of like it. You know, it allows Dokkaebi to be played more in a versatile role. You can play that as a flex, you can play that as the mailbox player, you can play it as the support, as that
10 seconds
lurker
left.
entry for that operator. And
5
now that
seconds
you
left
cannot
before
spam call
insertion.
people anymore, I think that character overall is quite balanced actually in the meta.
Attacker's objective is to
I think-
defuse a bomb.
It could partially also just be down to people kind of needing to figure out how the operator is now best played. It obviously does make it a little bit less oppressive for individual players as the round kind of progresses. You know, there's nothing worse than being last alive and having to deal with 4 Dokkaebi calls coming through at a certain point. You're kind of just happy when that phone explodes and you can finally have a bit of peace and quiet to think. You see Pozo here challenging into that same angle. They did challenge it last time as well, but getting away with his life this time and the breach being opened as well. Coming back to Dokkaebi, I think now that she has kind of been reworked, she can still be very strong and clear out entire positions or holds if used properly, especially in that late round in a post plant where you can kind of call everyone at the same time. It can still be incredibly strong. But Garen managed to get the opening pick here as well, and it looks good for good intentions. Scumsy has an incredibly aggressive position here, and they don't have any information.
Yeah, you know, that Nuke often not being the most impactful operator, you know, there's a lot of talk on that gadget and how it's kind of fallen off in popularity recently. But, you know, when you know the opposition is playing certain amounts of intel here, you are able to creep through those cameras should the opposition bring it. Now, I do not believe that there are other cameras except that bulletproof from Maraud's that is being watched. But, you know, that Nuke can creep through those cameras and be in a very, very aggressive playmaking spot. You know, with the DMR that was given to her a while back with the is it what was the name of that gun, that SMG that Dokkaebi has, that or that SMG that just got a kill on the Marats, you know, that we just talked about that. Like, they had no idea that Dokkaebi that Nuke was in position there. I'm sorry, I keep mistaking operators. I am talking out of my ass, as to so to say. But, you know, that is a very, very pivotal kill there. And we're in a man lead for good intentions now.
Bumsy's going to be working forward here to make even more of an impact this round. The nade being pulled out here to try and clear that close position, and now the decision is to swing or to be swung as Helm falls back here a little bit, trying to isolate that position, but he does get right back in here as Bumsy takes a prone angle with the shotgun coming through. The flashbang as well, flashing his own player. Obviously the Warden on the defender side not being as bothered, but the swing comes through despite the shotgun being brought. Bumsy manages to win out and he gets a 3rd kill on the round here as well as Garen picks up the last. And it is that 4-2 swap that you spoke about with a massive starring role for the Nook in this final attack round for good intentions.
I mean, as I said, that Nuke oftentimes is not brought, you know, for that lack of utility that she does bring, but when she's impactful, she's extremely impactful, and we saw that there. You know, being able to get that lurk kill and then going upstairs to help with that main push onto the upstairs hold. You know, we barely even see the bomb site that round. You know, it was all about that lurk and all about that upstairs hold.
Exactly, the tertiary site on this map, obviously being one, like we mentioned, that you very much win and lose on the top floor. You can try and go directly, but especially with that kind of interesting setup that they had with the Wamai there, with the shield aggressively looking out on the half of breach, it becomes even more difficult to kind of actually just push into the site there. And so they have elected to go for the top floor clear. And this round, it did work out better for good intention than it did last time, as we see the bans coming in here. We see a double shield and a double wall denial breach as well. Pretty standard, I would say, no?
Yeah, this is quite expected. You know, oftentimes you will see the defense ban out certain operators like the Grim with maybe a, you know, the Ace, or like we will see what is called hybrid bans. You know, let's say, for example, one execute operator being brought out or banned out, and then one hard bridge operator being banned out. But good intentions have elected to get those shields out of here. They clearly do not want to deal with them. They know themselves how powerful those shields can be. They use that Monty on Blackbeard push onto the top floor unsuccessfully, might I add, but still, those shields are strong. And as we see Maraud's bringing the blitz out here, I think those bans are warranted. And then onto the Kite and the Bandit, you know, that is El Clasico for a map like this. You know, you often see Nighthaven Labs, you know, Lair, Clubhouse being those breaches just being so gosh darn important that you will just ban out that hard breach now, and then you elect to deal with the rest that the defense may bring. You know, with those with that clash, with that Azami, with those smokes or the chunkas that we've been talking about. As long as you get the breach open, you're happy with.
Absolutely. And I think, especially with both of these teams having played a lot in Combine recently, they'll both have kind of an idea of what they want to do. Good Intentions will know that Kokosi have players that want to play on those shields. Kokosi will know that these kind of regional operators, sure, they are the statistically most banned pair of operators on this map, but they know that that's something that Good Intentions can work with as well. And beyond that, we see a very similar lineup between the two, actually. We see that Tachanka coming out, like we said, we see the Smoke coming out, we see the Goyo coming out, we see the Izami coming out, we see the Thorn coming out. These are all operators that you really just expect to see on these sites. And the same thing on the attack of Kokosi as well. It's nothing that's super out of the ordinary, no pocket picks like we saw with the Nuk, no like super heavy execute operators like we saw a little bit coming through from the side of Kokosi out on Consulate. So we see them go for a little bit more of a standard take for operational here as well.
You know, one thing I'm not seeing from the side of Good Intentions, which I sort of expected here with these bans, is that, you know, we talked about that mirror being a kind of pseudo heartbeat. What we oftentimes see is that Thermite being still available. You know, we'll see Tuberao freezing that wall and then mirror placing the window on it, and therefore destroying the heart breach of that Thermite, of that Ace, whatever you might bring. And we are just not seeing that. We're seeing Good Intentions pivot purely to that plant denial strategy. You know, they are going for broke on these plant denials, with the addition of the Azami there to hold that R6 room, hold that disposition that I've talked about, you know, being so pivotal. You know, playing to die there for the most part, but, you know, wasting as much time as she possibly can off of the attackers.
Exactly, and speaking of time, we only have 1 minute and 20 seconds left to go here. Shots come out for Pozo on this main stairs position. He's going to try and fall back here through that bathroom position as the Capital bolts come through and clear him off of that stairs position. And with that kind of being established, they have most of the control that they'll want here. Marat's with the diffuser pushing through aggressively. I'm not sure if it's the plan here. He is as aggressive as he is currently. The diffuser is going to push all the way through into the hallway here by bathroom and make sure that they get all of that control. So it's not just going to be a kind of half clear here with a focus on the plant. Obviously, that being incredibly difficult when you do have a track smoke staring him down. A bit more of a full clear has already managed to pick up the first kill here onto Bumsy out from that window, and a second one as well on to YMK, who went for the aggressive swing to try and get the refrag. Now that the Tachanka is going to have to do big work with 30 seconds left to go, but the control that Kokosi have might just end up being too much, as he is smoked off, but the fires come through. He fires himself as well, so he's going to have to push through aggressively. He managed to get the push through, but the cover is there from Hela, so he gets another, and already also on Pozo. It's a 5v1 situation here. The plant is going to go down, and it's all left up to Garen, and a flawless round from Kokosi, who managed to kind of sweep through that defense here, set that plant down. Despite the Tachanka being there, they managed to put the round off with the plant getting in.
Yeah. That was a very pivotal attack there, you know, them getting that first attack round with, you know, a flawless round. You know, that is a very, very, you know, comfortable position for them to be in. They have a 3-round lead now, and you know, I can't wait to see what the future brings. But I do believe we might have a bit of a rehost here coming up.
Yeah, exactly. I do think we have a little bit of a Rios coming up, so we will be able to at least have some time to talk about that first kind of attack round and seeing why that's so influential, because obviously having kind of returned back to normality, let's say here, you would expect it to be a little bit more standard here with the 4-2 round swaps coming through, and that's kind of what we saw at the beginning as well. And so Kokosi will be full of motivation and kind of yeah, in German you say Selbstvertrauen, but in English it's kind of just that trust in yourself after picking up an attack round as well. How do you think that kind of plays out? Do you think Kokosi have a massive advantage now going to the rest of it, or do you think this is what Good Intentions kind of fight back?
You know, I wouldn't say a massive advantage, but I think they do have an advantage. You know, we talked about that round parachute. You know, they're only 2 rounds away from the regulation victory here. That is all. You know, it is still lair attack. You know, it is not the easiest thing to you know, achieve, but it's not impossible by any means. You know, they could get those 2 attacks, and if they do that as comfortably as they did on the first round, you know, we often talk about that top floor. It is a defender's paradise. You know, you play those plant denial operators, you stall for the time, and that is exactly what we see Good Intentions doing, and they still failed at it. You know, we see the Blitz pushing deep onto that disposition, hiding behind those zombie barriers, and getting the plant down with good cover. You know, that is a very non-standard plant spot, and I don't think anybody on Good Intentions was expecting that. So if we see these kinds of plays coming out from the side of Kokosi, no, I would not be surprised with a 7-4 score, for example, or 7-3.
I think that's a very clear prediction coming out there as well from you. So I'll be interested to see if it ends up playing out. I'd be happy because it means that we go to a map 3 as well, which would bring us to Bank, which is a map that we've referenced a few times now already. So definitely an interesting one to see in the series for sure as well. And like you say, it kind of ends up being that psychological thing that we had before as well, because don't forget, in the very first map, they also had 5 rounds to 2, I guess, at some point as well here. They did have a 4-round kind of advantage. Now they have a 3-round buffer. So it does give you kind of a sense of security, but sometimes that sense of security is exactly what ends up coming back to bite you. And we already saw it happening on the last map. And so I do definitely hope that Kokosi kind of managed to learn from their complacency from that last map and bring it back. They do obviously have now the choice still on the side of Good Intentions for what site they want to go to when we come back from this rehost, and I'm expecting that they'll go back to that top floor. Is there something that you think that they can adjust to make sure that they win that next round?
Well, we didn't see any of these entry engagements go the way of Good Intentions there. We're seeing a lot of passive play back towards the side. We're seeing the Junker hide behind the shields. We're seeing the we have the Thorn on those rocket stairs, but we're seeing very much passivity, and then that utility just not hitting the spots actually there. As I said, we see that Blitz pushing in deep onto a plant spot that is very non-standard. That is not a default plant. That is not next to the door. That is not next to the breach. That is something you wouldn't expect. So maybe a little bit more intel on where these players are going. Maybe a Soulless below. To call out that plant. Maybe a pause to call out that plant for that util denial. That could be an answer to that particular problem on the top floor. But I'm very excited to see how they actually handle that. There are, as I said on Lair before the map, there are a lot of options on how to play this map. Actually, there's a lot of things you can do and a lot of things you can get away with. And that is only one particular strategy that we saw Good Intentions being pivoting to. There's a lot more they could do on that map, and I'm waiting to see if they do actually swap it up or if they go all in on that plant denial again and hope it works better this time.
I guess we will see when we manage to get back into the game from the rehost, but for the time being, we will be going into a very short break while we try to fix the lobby and make sure that everyone gets back together. So we will be seeing you very shortly.
Teilung hier sehr günstig für den lieben Corey, der das dann am Ende trotzdem abgeben muss. Shenzo jetzt hier mit dem zweiten Kill in dieser Runde, macht das gut mit dem Sledge. Und leider hat, glaube ich, Plunderstück so ein bisschen vergessen, was ihre eigentliche
Die eventuell davor raus hatten oder sag ich mir so, auf jeden Fall einplanen, dass man das nicht das Blickfeld lässt und sich da irgendwie unnötig swingen zu lassen. Aber Jeddah holt sich da auch direkt den Doppelkill raus. Axel und Percival. Und das ist genau das eingetroffen, was sie so ein bisschen angesprochen wurde. Sind 2 Stück um den Topfloor, die muss man auf dem Schirm haben.
Managers Office. In der Hoffnung, dass ihm jemand da ja, das haben sie aber auf dem Schirm. Finde ich sehr gut tatsächlich, dass das nicht funktioniert. Und das C4 von Rorik mit dem Teamkill. Sehr unangenehm.
Diese Aggressivität dann nicht einschlägt, dass du dann mindestens so eine Positionhaltung hast, dass sich entweder einer reframen kann oder du da selber den Kill noch holen kannst in der ersten Allüre. Aber Claudi, Aggressivität, kaum angesprochen, outjumpt und dass er dann einen Doppelkill holt, ist mehr als verboten für ihn, um wenigstens
besser einsetzen zu können, um den Plan zu dienen. Nein, wir sehen auch schon, am Default-Plan-Spot brennt der Boden schon ordentlich. Gleichzeitig hat man eine Corey wieder auf dem Smoke, glaube ich, wieder hier in Richtung von diesem Balcony, der jetzt glücklicherweise von Stiz gebreached wird. Damit wird es Corey da deutlich schwerer fallen, überhaupt Damage zu machen. Und da ist auch der wichtige Kill tatsächlich auf Blunted. Corey, nee, Entschuldigung. Kai Cox da immer noch am Start. Corey hat sich längst zurückgezogen. Es ist Inside Console Office unterwegs und wirft seine Toxic Pipe Canister in Richtung
drauf. Und ja, die Frage ist jetzt, was passiert? Man ist eingekistet auf dem Balcony, die Wände sind soft. Salzstreu jetzt in einer Aktion, probiert die Füße auf den Boden zu bringen. Oh. Und der schafft das, glaube ich, auch. Man holt sich den oben an der Hedge, führt das auf den Boden und jetzt ist raus! Salzstreu mit dem Knifekill auf Noxwell und dann ist es am Ende der Warden, der sich hier, Salzstreu-Mini rausziehen kann und die erste Runde für MS Feuer entscheiden kann. Aber auch die Runde...
Mit dem Glass setzt er auf jeden Fall ein bisschen Druck an. Hungry übers Window rein, Rorik über die Box.
No!
Hungry, der holt da Rorik, die Abstimmung. Die stimmt nicht ganz und somit verpasst man den Kill.
Oxidi fällt gegen Joker und jetzt müssten sie eigentlich nur mit 2 Leuten rausspringen und einer müsste den Diffuse gehen, aber sie verlieren leider erst. Fantasy holt den zweiten. Was macht ein NXT hier? Das ist ja ein Hühnerhaufen bei denen. In 10 Sekunden, er muss für den Diffuse gehen, hat 1 AP und damit geht diese Runde an Oblivion Gaming.
Fantasy, ganz ehrlich, der Mann des Matches kriegt sogar noch den letzten Kill. Was macht er? Also, er rappelt hat, gut gemacht, covert das und NXT.
Jetzt in Richtung von Animus. A-Side Plan scheint jetzt der Fokus zu sein, den Diffuser aber nicht dabei. Sie versuchen also auf den Kill zu gehen, von 2 Seiten aus die Schläge zuzuziehen. Ersten Bullets jetzt in die Richtung von Rimso, der versucht, um die Kiva Barriers rumzuspielen. Bekommt er den? Die
17 habe ich da eigentlich gerade bei Ying als die absoluten Vorteil gesehen, aber ein bisschen Krach macht nochmal Lärm. Oxity, der ist schon auf dem Spot, muss aber seinen Plan-Versuch abbrechen, denn da ist noch eben die Razor Bloom Shell. Man kann den Plan jetzt durchsetzen und so langsam sollte Oblivion aber mal Gas geben. Gegen der Hedge kann man nicht gegenkommen. Da kommt dann noch der eigene Team-Frag. Das war keine gute Runde. Da hätte man vielleicht mal ein bisschen früher agieren müssen. Hat denen da das Leben ein bisschen zu leicht gemacht auf Seiten von NXT.
Ja, da war die Ruhe einfach ein bisschen zu. Und jetzt ist Arthurs Opening Track bei 37 Sekunden gegen Sograna. Joker ist da, gegen Ranker. Da ist Arthurs nochmal, Doppelkill gegen Penguin. Arthurs mit dem Triple Kill. Dono beendet es. Oblivion gewinnt mit 8:7. Map Nummer 2. Map-technisch gesehen stehen sie damit 2:0 und gewinnen somit dieses Match, ziehen ein ins Finale des Upper Brackets gegen PK.
Und
RJ inside 490. Wehrt sich zwar, aber der Pokéball reicht. Die Contact zum Sieg in dieser Runde. Jay schon super low. Bei den vielen Gunfights, die er ja hatte. Wir haben es am Ende hier auch nochmal gesehen. Du wirst einfach confident. Ne? Du hast 6 Runden am Stück gewonnen und das auf der Tech Nighthaven Labs. Das hat killtechnisch extrem gut
Das würden sie einfach Top-Down-Clear nutzen, wollen die Decke aufmachen und Bodo, der öffnet auch mit der Kugel den Kopf von Bio und von daher hinterher. Damit
1. Den
2.
zweiten. Dritte wartet auf Zeit. Das ist eine 1-1-Situation. Ehrenbaba hat aber den Diffuser in der Tasche. Kann also versuchen, mit dem zu arbeiten. Es ist noch 1 Minute Zeit, also eine Menge Möglichkeiten, um Bio hier aus der Reserve zu machen. Setzt erstmal mit dem Plant an. Bio mit der Rotation in Richtung vom Hallway, will über Games auf die Side rotieren.
Er sieht ihn. Bio
schleicht und kriegt den Kill.
Bio kriegt den Kill. Gibt nicht auf, zieht Packbull raus. Es bleibt weiterhin richtig, richtig spannend.
In den letzten Sekunden geht dieser Kampf, er hört nicht auf, die Zeit tickt, der Diffuser muss jetzt sitzen, man versucht es, aber Nifs und nimmt so viel Schaden von jeder Cam. Rorik holt noch einen weiteren Spieler, alles an Nifs und ist die Maestro-Cam am Ende des Tages. GK holen sich den Sieg, den bitteren, erkämpften Sieg. Zum 7:4 erneut am Ende doch nochmal gestellt.
Für Panahone. Wir sehen das auch hier, es wird probiert, ein bisschen eigene Utility zu destroyen. Beide kommen da drüben über, ich glaube, Exosuit ist der Call. Exosuit ist da der Call. Und Skipper, schöner One-Tap gegen Lambe. Somit wirkt die Runde schon fast als besiegelt. Das geht ja hier. Und der Blitz rennt los, rennt Richtung auf sein. Man hört, der Flash geht durch. Hat doch irgendwie connected. Da ist der Oryx gegen die Wand. Oryx rennt gegen die Wand, ist blind, kommt durch die Wand, aber nicht durch. Man hat den Diffuser rausgeholt. Skipper zieht jetzt aber auch nochmal einen Kill. Und somit geht Packbull auf den Plan. Ich glaube nicht, dass Panon das gerade hinein kann. Wenn sie jetzt hinein könnten, würden sich die Runde sichern. Man stickt.
And we are back after the rehost with Kokosi versus Good Intentions. Kokosi here 5-2 up, attacking Lair after they did lose out on the first map. And so they are looking to try and bring it back here to bring us to a potential map 3. And they've got 2 rounds to do so, or they need 2 rounds to do so at the very least. We'll be going back to the top floor here, which they did just win on the attack. And we already discussed kind of what they need to do here to try and claw it back on the side of the defense for Good Intentions. We'll be seeing a very similar operator lineup, hopefully a slightly different idea on how to defend the site this time.
Yeah, you know, it didn't quite go to plan for Good Intentions last time. You know, I think they lost a little bit of that map control too early, and you know, they couldn't find the right amount of value from those gadgets that they're bringing. You know, that Goyo, that Petranka, you know, that Thorn didn't really, you know, hit the mark, as I would say. But you know, I'm sure they have introspective. I'm sure they know what the problem here was, and I'm sure they'll be remedying it for this round. You know, maybe holding on to that bathroom side a little bit more heavily. You know, we saw that Thorn being playing on those rocket stairs, along with a Goyo canister. So you know, they know that they have to hold on to that area of the map quite heavily. You know, but I'm very interested to see what they do differently this time. Maybe a little bit more, you know, of that defender aggression here on there. I'd like to see a spawn pick or maybe 2 here coming out. You know, stopping, you know, putting a stop to the rolling train that is Kokosi right now.
Absolutely, Kokosi have found their kind of stride when it comes to the attacks. Obviously, the attacks on the last map that we've mentioned so many times being such a prevalent factor when it came to that map 1, and it's not been quite as strong comes to map 2 here, we'll be seeing Kokosi trying to continue the trend that they had set here as they work their way into operational. Once again, they do have the vertical established to kind of try and deny that take from below, but it does obviously work both ways. We don't see anyone working on that bottom floor at the moment as we see that operation through the doors being popped and the breach being opened. Drones coming in as well as we can slowly see Devils approaching that outside rocket door, droning into here to see if there's anyone playing at the bottom of the lobby that could contest him. Sorry, as he tries to push in to clear those stairs, but he doesn't find anyone. So he's going to start working on clearing those stairs. Has already picks the first kill onto Kusik, and that's the Tachanka board early. It's a massive advantage for Good Intentions going into this round. Or for Kokosi going into this round.
Yeah, that Tachanka is very pivotal. And I do like the game plan that Good Intentions were going for here. You know, they were being a little bit more proactive on that operational side, you know, holding on to that map control for a little bit longer, but losing that Tachanka is just such a massive blow that they will have to claw the defense back from the edge of death, you know. 1 minute and a half still, you have that smoke, you have those thorn traps, you have those goyos, so you know that Tachanka is just like I cannot overstate how big of a loss it actually is for the game plan that Good Intentions are going for.
Absolutely, and so now they're gonna have to try and hold on here with the smoke that does do something similar to the Tachanka, of course, but not quite with the same range of denial as the Tachanka does bring. So we see some hits coming out there into Maros, who's going to be tasked with clearing out this main stairs, this rocket stairs position together with the fire, but the Goyo fire being enough to finish him off here. Devil's managed to swing around with the double kill on the Goyo canister from Bumsy here to bring the man advantage back as Kokosi gets another pick, immediately refragged once again from Bozo. 2v2 situation here, no more plant deny on the side of Good Intentions, and so they're gonna have to go for the kills here to be able to deny. You see the first pick coming through from Garen. He closes off the breach a little bit here just to make it a little bit more awkward for Already to push in. And with 30 seconds left to go, they have to come up with a plan here. Helamob is going to rotate downstairs to try and get that rocket position here. He gets the diffuser back onto their side, I think, as well. He still have one fire and one smoke left in his pocket as well, as Already is maintaining that position here out on the mezzanine stairs here at the top, opening up that Azami barricade to be able to push back in. Helamob taking a little bit of damage from the barbed wire as well as he pushes up, but they are going to be working towards this office side here, towards this mask side, as he pushes in to go for the plant. The Thorn Trap doing enough to do a little bit of damage. Maybe Pozo refrags the kill onto Already, and there's 2 seconds left. Helamob gets off the plant. And it's all enough for Good Intentions at the very end. A very close round. As I said in our little break, typically you don't see super close rounds on these kinds of sites, but this one really coming down to the wire.
Yeah, it did, and you know, I gotta give it to Good Intentions. You know, losing the Tachanka early, that they said we do not need that. That is fine. We don't care. And go on to win that round anyway with that Azami, you know, holding the fort on that desk for an amazing amount of time, and you know, then that Thorn just cleaning up the rest and running out the clock on the attack. Beautifully played all together, and then we're moving on to the basement. We're seeing a kind of a similar lineup again, but with one exception, and that is that Echo, those drones coming in clutch, you know, giving intel, stopping the plant alongside the Tachanka, the smoke, and even the Thorn being used sometimes as active plant denial. You know, you throw that Razor Bloom, it arms, and you have to get out, or you will die to it, or at least get downed. The game plan for Good Intentions is very clear here. You know, they want to run out the clock, and they've been doing a pretty good job of it, actually. You know, I respect the fact that they're going all in on it. You know, they're not really worried about the roam. They're not really worried about, you know, all these breaches obviously having the double electricity banned out for them, but you know, they're fully committing to that plant denial strategy.
It's similar to the defense approach that they found a little bit of success with on map 1, and so they're looking to run it back here on map 2 as well to kind of keep that momentum going. The Echo, of course, these days not only being a very potent plant deny operator late on in the round, but especially on sites like this, we see them kind of being used as pseudo attacker drones. So we already see aggressive positioning here from Marit into electrical, but being immediately contested by Pozo here on the Thorn. And so he's going to have to wait a little bit for the rest of his team to make some progress through Garage side as well. He might be able to cut the rotate off here, but obviously doesn't want to ADS too aggressively either, as the Blitz losing that early on would be incredibly dangerous, as we see 2 defenders here swinging in to try and go for a trade here. It's a shield break, so he won't be as quick as he was before. The Tachanka fire coming out as well to make sure that he doesn't get too much control too quickly, and a good amount of damage coming into the field as well. Might become interesting later on in the round.
that. You know, Marat's being very, very omnipresent on that blitz. You know, I would not be surprised to see it banned out after this. I'm sorry, not this round, after the next round, actually. You know, once we get the last set of bans here. But, you know, those shields, they're clearly something that Good Intentions is worried about, you know, having them banned out. The double shield ban on there. So I would not be surprised to see that blitz go out. And, you know, I would kind of like to see a Tachanka ban as Marat actually takes up the Tachanka here. You know, these two operators that I was just talking about, I guess it's the caster as the other Marat picks up Pozo and Hella picks up YMK, you know. 5-1 this defense very quickly falling apart from the side of Good Intentions, as Bumsy does find already with the shotgun, but it's still a long way to a victory.
Bumsy manages to deny, for now at least, the flawless round, and he gets a second shot here onto the IQ as well. The plan is going down, but Devils with the cover will be enough to shut him out. Bumsy here was looking for the unlikely, but if we look at what we've seen this game, it's been everything but expected, and so I would have been surprised if we see the smoke come in with another clutch round here. But that round win for Kokosi does bring us to a match point here with 3 rounds for Good Intentions on the defender side of Lair to bring it back. We see some bans coming in, but before we see them, I would like to ask the chat. Like I said, there's a tradition that we bring from the German cast, which is hashtag comeback or hashtag Zakzu, meaning will Good Intentions be able to bring back a comeback here, or will Kokosi take this map and push us all the way to map 3?
You know, it is still anyone's game. You know, Kokosi does have a 3-round advantage, and they are on match point now. But, you know, we've seen crazier things, namely the last map that these two teams have played. You know, it's a long way to overtime, but it is by no means impossible. And as we see the bans come out here, we see the Mira being banned out. You know, I don't think Good Intentions have actually used the Mira thus far in this game, which is a very interesting thing for Kokosi to ban out preemptively. Maybe they have some prior knowledge from, as you said, playing these guys in Combine or other tournaments. And Good Intentions banning out that blitz, as I said, could be a possibility in the last round.
Absolutely. I think those triple shields are something that is really, really dangerous here for the side of Good Intentions, and something that they clearly just don't want to deal with. Marat's was, like you said, omnipresent on that blitz, playing it pretty much every round out on the attack and being incredibly effective with it as well. The Tachanka being entry picked twice, one time by the blitz and one time by the ace. So not only does he have that big slap of metal in front of his face that makes him so difficult to kill, obviously his feet still being a nice little target for the defenders, but that pistol also doing a good amount of damage when it hits someone into the head. And so they've decided that's not something that we want to deal with. We will be the only ones with shields here, but little do they know that Maratz has another trick in his pocket.
Yeah, you know, we're seeing that is that the Hungary special? I believe the fuse shield. You know, that is something that you very much do not see often. You know, that shield being brought on the fuse. You do not see fuse very often. You know, this is an operator that is not that popular altogether. You know, teams often opting for other verticality or util clearance options, but you know, Marat says that I want to play the shield and you can't stop me. That's Melee's Melee, actually, you can't stop him as Cusick does to get the kill, avenging himself from the last round, you know, him dying first on that Tachanka, and now he finds the pick onto the shield. But, you know, Marat's clearly, he loves that shield, and they're not going to deter him from playing it.
Fantastic pick here from Heller as well. He does get Fenrir, but that doesn't stop him as he swings around and manages to find the head of YMK. The Goyo dropping out early here, and the Echo Stun not quite enough to allow Cusick the advantage in that gunfight, although Devils is downed afterwards. And so the man trade isn't quite there, as there is still Heller here on the cover, and another gunfight here with Maratz finding Pozo. And so now it is a 4v2 situation as the res is looking ever so more likely with Garen on an aggressive position here as well. They are fighting for this garage positions. Whatever it takes, Bumsy picking off Maratz here. So Devils is still down, although the res will be coming through shortly. And so it looks like it's going to be a little bit closer here, as we might think already has found a gap onto site here. He does get trapped by the Thorn, and so he walks through. Bimsy managed to pick up Hella. The downed Devils also confirmed, and so now defenders become attackers and attackers become defenders, as already has taken site control, but Bumsy knows about it, swings on him and lockers, and manages to take out the backstabbing Deimos.
Yeah, you know, good intentions require a hero here to bring them all the way to overtime and possible victory, and Bumsy has stepped up to the plate. You know, that Smoke doing work on that basement floor. You know, he heard the call and he responded. He went to town on these attackers.
Absolutely. Those defender positions being oh so difficult to clear out. I think it's really good to see as well from Good Intentions that they've preemptively already thought that the Fuse shield might come out after the other 3 shields are being banned, bringing that Echo and really forcing that double play on him as well. We'll be seeing the Echo once again on that top floor now that they have seen that Marat is willing and able to play that Fuse shield if needed. And so they are going to stick with those kind of more defender-sided or those more shield counter kind of operators to play into that a little bit more, which I think is very smart as well, making sure that they're limiting the possibilities that Kokosi have on their attack. It's quite interesting that we see the Fuse shield, or we see it being picked off here, I was about to say, because VP, obviously, the major kind of Russian team, or at least previously that major Russian team, being the team in Pro League that has kind of pioneered bringing that Fuse shield with those triple shield operator bans coming in so frequently against them as well, that they've said, hey, we're going to build Fuse shield into our strats because there is a very good chance that we're going to have to build him or play him. So we are going to build our strats around him with that kind of in the back of our heads. But alas, this round we won't be seeing him, so all of that has become completely irrelevant as we see Marat switch to an equally interesting operator, in all fairness, on the sense.
Yeah, that sense, you know, of being very good for the side executes, you know, ever since the change of where Warden cannot see through those sense walls anymore, it's been a very, very good operator to deny those lines of sight, you know, making it unclear where the plant is going on, making it unclear where those attackers are pushing from, and just altogether a very well-balanced operator with those nades, with, you know, the gadget, obviously, that I just touched upon, and receiving a new AR here, the same AR that Dokkaebi has received in the latest patch, having that DMR option as well, you know, the 417 off the thought as one of the strongest guns in the entire game, you know, to deal with, for example, on zombie barricades or those normal barricades or those lines of sight that you want to open up, you know, just altogether a well-balanced operator. And you know, clearly the Echo was a problem for the side of Kokosi last round, so they have elected to bring the IQ this time, you know, to deal with those Echo cams and get them out of the game.
Meanwhile, Maritz will be working on trying to clear out as much utility as he can, but Bumsy is going to carry on where he left off in that last round. Since that rehost, Bumsy has found 8 kills for himself. That is more than, or that is exactly double the rest of his team's combined kills. And so he's really decided to put the team on his back to try and drag them into overtime here. So we see Maritz continue to try and clear as much utility as he can. That bathroom position, like we said, so incredibly important. Just making sure that there's no traps there waiting. The Pozo is potentially laid for them to try and catch them as they jump in. You see the rest of Kokosi working for that operations take, the DMRs trying to make a little bit of holes at least, to create some sight lines, create some possibilities of egress here so that Maritz can drop that sense wall similarly to what they did on Consulate, kind of take away those easier angles to kind of deny that 90 push here as we go for the breach, but Bumsy's taken out of the round. Cusick immediately refrags Devils here. So although they've lost Bumsy, they do manage to keep that man count advantage. Default breach being open now and the possibility for a plant slowly being worked.
You know, one thing that we don't really see often as Cusick does go down on the Echo, with Pozo finding a pick onto the floors of Mirage, is that Echo shotgun that Cusick brought along. You know, that it's quite a rare sight, honestly, but it is a lethal weapon. You know, it is a monstrous damage machine in the right hands, and with Echo having you know, that shield those impacts and that secondary SMG, it is a viable choice, honestly. And I think a lot of the teams should pick up on the ball knowledge of that Echo shotgun and run it a lot more often.
For sure, it's a strong operator. The shotguns in general in Siege being so strong on those close angles, if you can get the right positioning. And Echo just in general being able to provide so much utility both in the mid and the late round. We won't see him on the board here anymore as Garen manages to pick off Hella as well. And so now it's only Maritz left, but he also gets picked up by the Azami of Garen. Good Intentions fight back for yet another round, and they only need one more to bring us back into yet another overtime.
It will be the last round of regulation now, and that Azami also putting in a lot of work on that top floor. You know, a lot of time, you know, teams will go for the demos, go for the bucking to get that vertical pressure, you know, force to smoke the Azami out, or even with that Capital, you know, you need to clear that position. That desk is so pivotal for that top floor hold that is a must if you want to go for that operational side, that breach side clear. You know, you have to get that Azami out. And as we see here for the defense of Good Intentions, what happens when you don't clear that Azami out, you lose, plain and simple. But, you know, we're going to the tertiary, which I don't believe Good Intentions have shown yet. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of meta, you know, here. We're seeing the Warden, we're seeing the Solus that are pretty standard for that top floor hold, you know. If teams elect to go for that type of rush plan, you know, often we see people go for Montaigne on that green, you know, that obviously not available right now, but planting behind a Montaigne on that green door. that Solus and that Warden will be very, very pivotal in, seeing through that plant execute style utility and getting the planters off if necessary.
Based off of the-
Actually,
Yeah?
go ahead.
No, I was gonna
We
say,
see
based off
Marat's
the-
bringing on the fuse again here.
Yeah, exactly. I think the shields are being banned away, like you said, so you can't go for that turtle plant, but Marat's is kind of remembered, hey, I do still have that one shield open and as an option. And so we do see exactly that. We see the shield being brought together with the Sentence Wall that you already mentioned is so dangerous when it gets dropped down there, and you can kind of allow that plant down to that kind of covered position in bunks. But obviously with the 2 operators on the top floor that can deny that, the Warden in case of smoke, and the Solus in case of sense. And so those are going to be the 2 operators that need to be taken out here, with the top floor control being taken first from Maritz here, also with Hella denying that flank position there. The next point will be clearing off those green stairs and making sure that no one can push up those, but it looks like no one's contesting those anyway. So the shield fuse will be slowly walking towards the storage side here, making sure that they can clear out that first point of position before they go for that plant, making sure that that verticality doesn't become as much of a problem as it can.
Yeah, the thing about pure shield and why we don't often see that is that shield has no other redeeming qualities other than just being a shield. On Blitz you can do the flash, on Blackbeard you can breach with the shield, and you have that lethal AR, and on Mountain of course you have the full extend available to you to block all of that frontal damage. On the fuse you really don't have any of that. Like, you only have the Baron shield, and that gadget really isn't as strong as you would like to be. If you're bringing the fuse shield, you gotta ask yourself, what are you not bringing to the attack? What are you foregoing in favor of that fuse, and how do you actually get value out of that gadget on these attacks?
Moritz does have control of the green lobby here now, and so he's going to be able to start putting pressure onto site. Is already this close to him as well to put down those sense gadgets if he so needs to. Thermite also down below, and that just leaves 2 attackers above to put pressure on this kind of top floor hold to make sure that the verticality can't be played. YMK with their first few shots coming out here as well onto Devils, who's playing onto that Pebbles door. Pozo also close with them here, and if they do decide to go for a force, that might allow them to get a pick here, but Hella is going to be trying to hold that cross with Devils, just making sure that they can't deny too much, but the smoke and also the Solus from above going to be those 2 key operators to make sure that the plant cannot be successful, while Kusik is also still playing down on the site. Pozo is placed down some utility as well to make the gunfight a little bit more favorable, as Hella decides to rotate down as well, leaving only Devils above, and him being the only one to deny anything verticality. Kusik here down on the site, and that does mean that the site is open, but that vertical hold from Good Intentions has not been addressed yet. Senseline comes out now, and so he's going to push through to go for the plant. He fakes the first plant here, but doesn't quite stick it. Already Endeavors both pick one, but the diffuser is dropped down, and it's only YNK and Garen left here. They're going to have to try and deny it again. Garen with another kill through the verticality, a 3v2 situation here. The plant denied once again, and this is exactly why you need to clear that top floor. YMK with a shotgun close as well to clear out Devils. That's the top floor hold, and another shotgun kill for YMK as well here, and it's all down to Maratz here. Only 6 seconds left to go. 2 defenders left on the side of Good Intentions. One comes through with a swing, and the lineup was almost there, but Garen with yet another one here, showing us exactly why you need to clear that top floor before you try and go for the plant, as we go into yet another overtime.
Yeah, we're going to overtime, but yes, like that round is exactly what we're talking about. You have to clear the top floor, and one thing I noticed there is that I talked about the utility of the fuse shield. We saw 4 of those gadgets still in pocket at the time of death for the fuse, and that plant spot being kind of suspect as well. They didn't go for that tuck in that that bunks, small cubby in that corner where they maybe might have wanted to go for. They didn't go for that door plant that you often see with those shields, and they planted out in the open, and that gave the Solus a pretty good shot at denying it, as they, I do believe, did. And you just gotta clear the top floor. You cannot go for that plant with that Solus, with that Warden still up, because what happens is you will get the plant denied. Like, that is very rare that actually works out for you if you do not clear that top floor. And Good Intentions playing that quite perfectly to the T, and showing why that's so important.
So we go back to the very same site directly again as well. It's not something that you see all too often when you go into the overtime. It's Good Intentions elect to play that bunk site once again, playing that same kind of extended hold through the top floor, as we do see the same operator lineup again from the side of Kokorsi as well. But you must expect that there is some kind of adaptation coming through from the Russian attacking side here. Otherwise, they will meet a very similar fate here, with that plant being denied so effectively from above from the Solus, not choosing to bring a Thatcher or anything to deny that utility from above, which he can do from the security of the outside. So I'm interested to see here what the adaptation is that Kokosi bring in, but it looks like at the very beginning, at least of the round, they will be going for a very similar attack here over that new bridge kind of site, with that breach being opened here early by Maris as well.
Yeah, you know, oftentimes we see, you know, sort of pocket plays like playing the Ying on that top lane, you know, blinding the Solis so that they cannot use the gadget effectively enough to deny that plan. That is why you play that Warden also there. But, you know, I would like to see an operational side a crossover here, or maybe some pressure applied from the bathroom side, you know. They tried to go for that solo green push last time and it didn't quite work out. You know, you need to put more pressure onto the top floor, and having only that one angle being worked with Devils and Hela here, you know, you really only have one direction that the attackers are coming from, and that the defenders have to be mindful of. You know, that entire like operational and R6 and bathroom side is completely free. You know, they don't have to worry about it, which gives them more time and more manpower to think about how they're going to deny that attack from only that one particular site.
Seeing the breaches being opened once again downstairs, opening up all those angles that they need onto the site before any work is done against that top floor hole. And so it looks like Kokosi thought that the last round wasn't all too bad and that they'll be going for something similar again here. But the smoke also working here into storage to make sure that no one can push in on the side of Devils to put a little bit more pressure here onto the green hallway. Marit's holding the diffuser once again, probably looking to go for that same reverse plant. First few ticks come through from the smoke here. He's damaged in that green pillar, that green hallway. Devils taking a few shots as well. Just playing a little bit passive here, making sure that he doesn't kind of get himself into all too much trouble as the Azami barricades are cleared from already as well, who has taken position above this time. So not in position to place or to cover anything from below as the first nades come through as well. Being caught by those Wamai gadgets since the recent buff. There's only 50 seconds left to go here with all the damage being on the side of Kokosi here as Usyk manages to pick up Maritz here. That's the thermite off the board and their breach pressure gone as well. As Maritz works slowly towards the site, Usyk on low HP as well, but does still have his HP, and now they decide that they need to flip. Maritz is going to be pushing through the top floor here, takes a few shots through that hallway as well, but needs to be aware that there's someone close right of him as well. As the Azam barricade comes through, the shotgun close, doesn't manage to get the swing. Kozo managed to pick up one, but he gets refragged by Hela, and now Bimsy gets a second kill as well onto Hela. And so it's only already left here. The second approach didn't go any better than the first one. In fact, Good Intentions managed to do even better this time around, as it looks like they'll be bringing us to a match point for the first time for them, but already he managed to get one more pick on Usyk, and now it's a 3v1 situation. 10 seconds left to go though. Bimsy with a shotgun manages to close it out. A triple kill for him in the round, and now it's only one more round for Good Intentions to pull off yet another comeback for the potential 2-0 sweep.
Yeah. Like, that attack went, unfortunately for the side of Kokosi, just as I predicted it kind of would. You know, they flipped that push. They realized that the top floor has to be cleared way too late in the round. There's 40 seconds on the clock. You cannot flip that push anymore. You have to decide that you're going for that clear way earlier, and you have to plan your game plan around it. You know, as I said, like, there just aren't enough angles for the defense to be worried about. Like you are sitting pretty and sitting comfortably inside of that R6 room, and you are not worried about a backstab from operational or the bathroom side. Like, you have no worries in the entire world. You can just be focused on rebuking that push from the green stairs and that one outside door. But you know, that is still one hallway you have to worry about. You know, that's not a lot of angles to be working against for the defense. And you know, and your players like that Solis, like that Warning, can just be focused on the plan denial. Giving you know, Good Intentions the defense scot-free. That top floor is important for a reason, and they just don't clear it well enough.
And of course it isn't. It's a lot easier said than done taking the top floor control. You know, we see it when we defend top floor as well. It can be so difficult to push into those 90-degree angles, those small hallways, especially when there's so many shotguns on the side of the defense as well. It's just not something that you can ignore, and we saw exactly why that verticality becomes so important. And if you only give yourself 30 seconds to kind of flip around at the end of the round, you just can't really do enough, especially when there is no pressure through mezzanine, there is no pressure through display. And so Kokosi really made it as difficult for themselves as they could during that round, just by not allowing themselves enough points to attack from. But now they will be tasked with defending a very similar site to the one that they just attacked, seeing if they can come up with a little bit more resistance here this time, as they go for that top floor hold again with some aggressive plays here from the smoke and from the Warden as well, over on that missile side of the map.
My eyes immediately go to Bumsy, the hero of good intentions here. On that Deimos, we still have the Azami from Hela, working that R6 room, that desk position that I've talked about on numerous occasions. How are you going to uproot that? Well, one answer to that question is the Deimos. Like, if the Deimos can get a good angle below and it remains uncontested from these verticals that Kokosi have made, undoubtedly, you can be picked off from those. But, if that Deimos does succeed in getting that Azami, it makes the job of good intentions way, way easier here for going for that plant.
And that plant is something that they will be working towards as Devils managed to get a double kill here on that aggressive push towards operational. That's exactly what you want to see on the side of Kokosi, because you still have so much plant deny open, like you said, in case it does get all the way to the plant. But it's looking ever so less likely as good intentions just fall like flies here at the beginning of the round. 1 minute 40 left to go. Now as Garen does manage to get a refrag here a little bit late onto the smoke of Marat, and so that's one kind of utility deny or one kind of plant deny off of the board here. But of course that the Tachanka is still being available, being the more potent of those two, if you could say so, as Devils works to retake the position here, and a little bit of damage coming through to him from that bathroom window as well.
Yeah, Devils still having that C4 in his pocket should he come to need it, and 19 Shumikas in the pocket of Marats with 2 Azami barriers in the pocket of Hela. You can still block off those angles from the breach with those Kiba barriers. It is not looking too good for the good side of good intentions, and they are running against the clock here. 1 minute on the board, and they're working a disadvantage with that Tachanka still being alive and well and having that launcher in his hand to waste even more time off of the attack. I think good intentions needs to get a move on here quite soon, or they're just going to be fighting against the clock and themselves and running out the time before they can actually get anything done.
As you say, that Kusik managed to pick up another kill onto Hela, which was previously such a pivotal position here. That mask desk, especially with that Azami playing there, is so strong. As now we see already here around the display side with the Warden also tucked here deep into server, with the Tachanka still denying that plant here. They do know that there's one potentially below as the Deimos comes here through with the track onto the Tachanka, and so he won't be able to deny anymore. He's taken off the board as Garen picks off another onto Devils, and it looks like good intentions have managed to swing the round here already all alone now. He has to find 3 to be able to win that round. Flashbangs coming through now, so he won't be able to see for a few seconds as Kusik manages to put down that diffuser. 40 seconds on the clock here. Pre-fire is coming through. He pops that Goyo canister to make sure that he gets a pick here. The first one onto Already. His Devils has already left the lobby. He has no faith into Already here to pick up this round. He doesn't quite know the positions of the last 2 attackers as he pushes forwards, gives away one, and Garen manages to close it out. We do not go to max overtime for a second map in a row, as good intentions manage the double comeback to win this series 2-0.
Yeah, accommodations to good intentions there. That's very well played. And as I said, they need to get a move on. They did. People often say that Siege is the chess of shooter games, and unlike chess, if you've been strategically outsmarted or you're in a bad position, you can always just shoot the enemy in the face, which is something that good intentions very well did there. That gunplay being excellent. Just finding those picks in those pivotal moments and finding the round off of those.
Absolutely. I think they really kind of showed as well not just the strategical knowledge that they have about these maps, but also just kind of that mental resilience. I think what we spoke about a lot in map 1, when they already had to come back from that disadvantage that they found themselves in, and also backs against the wall, not only when it comes to score, but also the side of the map that they would be on in the end. But then also later on, going into that second map, going down again a little bit more expectedly on the attacking side, that time of Lair, but managing to pull it back again after 2 overtimes. Really, really impressive stuff from good intentions there on both of those maps. But it looks like we will be getting an interview coming in as well. So we'll be switching over to that and seeing what they have to say themselves. Bumsy, good evening, buddy.
Hello.
How are you doing after that? I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Nice and relaxed?
Yeah, chilling.
I mean, we already spoke about it quite a lot on the stream, especially after that first map, which is something that neither of us have either experienced. I'm not sure about you personally. But 5-1 down going into the attacking side of Consulate, one of the most defender-sided maps in the map pool. How do you feel kind of going into that?
But we purposely trolled the defenses so we could play more attacks. That was the plan. So we could get some attack reps. You know how it is.
That's fair enough.
Yeah,
that's good. At the end of the day, it is important to make sure that you can show off everything you have in your arsenal as well, kind of get some reps in. So from that side, as a coach myself, I have massive respect for that for sure. You definitely gave us something to watch and to kind of enjoy. how much does the knowledge that you can fight back from such a big disadvantage going into the second map where you found yourself down 4-2 again and 5-2 at a certain point as well, how much does the knowledge that you can fight back from those disadvantages kind of play into the mental side of that?
I mean, we knew like, I mean, the way they play is always just very slow. Like they've always been the same even when they were Dire Volley. Yeah, they're just always very slow. So like, you know, just kind of like take the round how it is. Like even on those top floors on Lair as well. Like I think everyone went to like 20 seconds apart from probably the first one. Like it was just, they're just really, really slow. So just, yeah, to be honest, you just run down the clock. It becomes quite easy. I mean, on the Lair attacks, like it kind of is what it is. Couple silly mistakes, but nothing too special.
I definitely don't want to glaze you too much, but after that rehost came in, I think at the end, I think you went 14-4 or something like that after the rehost. Really put your team on your own back there and said, hey, no, I don't want to go to a map 3. I want to try and close this out. Is there anything that you felt like you kind of needed to take control of that map, or is that just something that happened kind of naturally as it went on?
No, not really. I was just kind of in the right positions to get the kills.
That's a talent as well, right?
Me and Garen had like the 2v4 on Garage where I got like 4.
Yeah.
And then like, I don't know. I mean, I think I had 7 before the Rios as well. So I think I actually had 20, but
subtle flex.
Yeah.
No one's counting.
No one's counting. But like, you know, I was in the right positions. Like even on the bunk rounds, like they all just pushed to be in storage with a shotgun. So I was like, okay, I'll just take some freebies. Like,
I was gonna say, you never complain about those, right?
Nah.
One last thing that I want to touch on. Obviously, you guys competed in Combine as well, and I think you will be the first to admit that that didn't go the way that you guys would probably have expected to, and also the way a lot of people watching kind of expected. Obviously, you guys going in probably one of the bigger favorites in a lot of these T2 tournaments. Does that kind of pressure not necessarily, but that kind of expectation that people will have for your performance play into this? And how does the kind of disappointing, I want to say, Combine result play into how you then approach the following tournaments?
I mean, when it comes to Combine, like a lot of games we had subs because people couldn't play. Like even on the LCQ, like I wasn't there and Pozo wasn't there. So like there was just a lot of games with subs, and to be honest, it was kind of damage limitation. We kind of knew that from the start anyway. So like kind of is what it is. Like we're not too bothered. But yeah, like there's no pressure going into games. Like we know how good we are. Like know how good we can be. It's just if we show up, you know, only got ourselves to blame at the end of the day.
I was going to say, definitely when you had your backs against the wall, you showed that you can show up when you need to. So congratulations on the win, Bumsy. If you have any last words for the viewers at home, now's your time.
No real last words, just like T2's a mess, to be honest. We really need to get some better players in T2, I can't lie. That's all I've got to say.
Fair enough. Some fighting words there from Bumsy at the very end. Get your game up, guys, or they'll continue stumping you. Thank you very much for the interview, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your
Thank you
evening.
very much. Bye-bye, guys.
All right. That was Bumsy. He said it, right? When they need to, they can absolutely do it. He kind of put his team on his back there as well. Some fighting words to finish us off as well. Heike, do you have any more analysis of what we saw in that last map there? Those kinds of massive fightbacks from the sides of Good Intentions?
Yeah, you know, it's been a day of comebacks and day of attacks. You know, that's really is the theme here. You know, that mental resilience from the side of Good Intentions to look at the game and be like, hey, we're down a lot of rounds. We're not getting these rounds as well as we want to, and then coming back from these situations, these very dire situations, these man count disadvantages. You know, I've got nothing to say than to commend these players for their mental resilience and their clutch plays, you know, in these moments, especially Bumsy, you know, in these moments where it counts, they get it done. And, you know, that allowed them the victory here. And I think they're very happy with their performance.
For sure. I think it's definitely something that they can both look at and learn from after obviously being down quite heavily on the rounds, but also the way that they fought back and the way that they managed to find their feet in a lot of these rounds. Definitely something that you can look at and build upon, especially for a roster like Good Intentions, like we said, that has been around for so long. They know what they're capable of. They know what they can do when they need to. And some fighting words as well for the rest of T2. If you don't want Bumsy and his side of Good Intentions to keep on walking over you guys, you have to step your own game up. And so I will be expecting teams to be bringing their absolute A game against them in the coming play days. Unless you have anything else to add, that's it for me at least.
No, I don't have anything else to add other than the fact that, you know, Bumsy has been fighting words, but as a Finn, I gotta represent, you know, the Panduhana core, you know, the former the last year's T2 champions in Europe, you know. I'm expecting to see some good games from them, and I'm seeing if Good Intentions can back up their words and give us a fight if that matchup does come to realize in the future.
Absolutely. We've already seen some absolutely thrilling engagements over these past 2 days. And of course, we're going to keep on doing so next week with the next play days of the Meisterschaft. So from that side, thank you very much, Heike. Thank you very much, everyone in the production as well. And thank you very much, everyone in the chat for coming along for another fantastic play day of the Meisterschaft. This has been Maxwell. This has been Heike. Thank you very much all and have a fantastic evening.
Thank you. Yeah.